After that, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan drove a beat-up car they found by the road, trailing slowly behind the mobile base. "I want to ask Tao Zi a few things once she wakes up," I said. Wei Feifei nodded slightly. Honestly, if Tao Zi were conscious, she'd definitely be willing to answer any of your questions. After all, you've saved our lives twice now. I smiled but said nothing. To me, what you call life-saving was just a side task, hardly worth mentioning. Agreeing to let Li Yusin treat Tao Zi wasn't entirely about getting information out of her, either. I guess I still have a bit of a heart after all. The thought crossed my mind, though I didn't voice it. I looked down at the mobile base beneath my feet, anticipation gleaming in my eyes. Let's see what kind of beast you become once this upgrade is finished. Under Wei Feifei's guidance, the mobile base quickly entered a fairly open area and pulled up in front of an apartment building. A few dozen scattered zombies were drawn by the noise, but they couldn't even scratch the mobile base's outer shell. They could only howl and throw themselves uselessly against the exterior. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan quickly picked them off through the vehicle's window slits. Afterward, Zero and Ing got out, swept the building, and cleared a room for us. "We'll rest here for now," I announced. "Fine by me." It was getting a bit cramped on the bus anyway. Li Yusin stood up and nodded. With Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan taking up the cockpit, space wasn't too tight, but adding Wei Feifei and Tao Zi made it crowded and hard to move around. Besides, Li Yusin needed a quiet space to treat Tao Zi. "Don't worry, this won't last long." I spoke with confidence, hinting that the mobile base was about to finish its upgrade and solve the space issue for good. Jiang Zhuiying and the others looked at me with curiosity, but no one asked questions. After following me for so long, they were used to these mysteries. Only Rin Xiyu, with her stunningly beautiful face, gave me a long, silent look. Even though my mental powers have improved so much, I still can't see through him. She sighed inwardly. "Yunxia, if I hadn't left the starseed back then, I wonder if you'd be regretting it now." Rin Xiyu suddenly thought of her sister, Rin Yunxia, an ambitious and arrogant girl whose actions even she couldn't predict. Perhaps right now, Yunxia is still in Banju City, while I've already reached the point where I can kill a military major general with my own hands. "Yunxia, you really underestimated Jiang Lushi. And as for him, he has far surpassed even my wildest imagination. Every time I think I've seen his limit, he shows me something new." Rin Shiyu's gaze softened for a moment before she quickly hid it behind her downcast lashes. "Just a little longer. Once I can stand as his equal and no longer have to rely on him, then even if he says nothing, maybe I will." A spark flashed in her eyes as she made a silent, firm resolution. When I pulled the bus over on that secluded roadside, I was the only one left inside. With my hands on the steering wheel, an indescribable feeling welled up in my chest. Since the apocalypse began, I've driven this vehicle through countless dangers. It's taken a lot of hits, and the number of people riding with me has only grown. Jiang Zhuiying, Rin Xiyu, Li Yusin, Zero, Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan. Every single name is incredibly important to me. We've gone through Jiangbei, Jinling, and now Zhonghai. Every place holds its own memories, and none of it would have been possible without this bus. Starseed. I took a deep breath and opened the control panel. The mobile base is currently upgrading. Does the host wish to continue? If you proceed, the host will enter the mobile base's upgrade template adjustment program. The cold, electronic voice rang out, but to me, it was the most reassuring sound in the world. I let out a soft breath and made my choice. Confirm. Entering the mobile base upgrade template adjustment program. The scene before my eyes shifted instantly. A 3D holographic projection appeared, showing the mobile base from every angle. It was so clear I felt like I could see through every internal detail. Storage space, energy lab, biological lab, mutant plant research room. Everything was laid out clearly. Even the hidden spaces invisible to the naked eye appeared one by one. Looking at the current scale of the mobile base, I couldn't help but be amazed. A surge of pride and accomplishment washed over me. I actually did it. Everything I have today is the result of relentless effort. Even with the Starseed's help, I wouldn't have made it this far if I hadn't pushed myself. The Starseed took me from an ordinary person and turned me into someone who could kill a general. The moment I pulled the trigger on Han Yuan, I couldn't help but feel a bit of pride. But I know better. Despite my current strength, I'm still not ready to face a real army. Today alone, with just 10 tanks, my mobile base was nearly destroyed. What if one day I have to face an entire division equipped with even more modern and destructive weapons? The military doesn't just have tanks. They have countless terrifying weapons, maybe even nukes. I looked at the control panel, which displayed the damage data and the mobile base's endurance limits after the clash with the military. An invisible pressure weighed on my heart. According to what Han Yuan said, that mysterious faction is hiding within both the military and the government. That means I won't just be facing another Han Yuan, but people who are stronger, more dangerous, and far more calculating. But even so, I have no intention of backing down. With the mobile base in my hands, I hold a power with infinite potential. Thinking of this, a surge of heroic spirit rose within me. Everything starts with this upgrade. I stared intently at the control panel. For this upgrade, the mobile base has 3 development paths to choose from: space expansion, weapon upgrades, or reinforced armor. Space expansion would make the mobile base roomier, reducing the clutter and unlocking several new functions. Weapon upgrades would add 2 new types of weaponry, giving the mobile base the power to take on even stronger enemies. And if I chose reinforced armor, the mobile base would gain superior durability, potentially even becoming immune to tank shells. Additionally, I discovered a completely new add-on option that had never appeared before: power system, secondary type, utilizing blacklight energy. It seems this system unlocked automatically after the mobile base and the starseed absorbed the blacklight energy, I thought to myself. But right then, I spotted another hidden option: combined mobile base mode. Currently, my mobile base is just the basic version, the standard form. This combined mode is clearly an advanced version. What a surprise! My heart raced as I looked at this option. This must be the reward for over-absorbing the blacklight energy. This upgrade won't just make the mobile base bigger, it could turn it into a true mobile war fortress. However, upgrading to the combined mobile base mode will consume a massive amount of blacklight energy. That means I'll have to readjust the other choices regarding space, weapons, and armor. Which one should I pick? I pondered. Facing this crucial choice, I realized I was standing on the threshold of a turning point. Finally, I made a decisive move. From the moment I got the starseed, my goal was to own a massive mobile base, a real war fortress. Now that this function is unlocked, there's no reason to hesitate. Select Upgrade to combined mobile base mode. Only by becoming a complete mobile base will it truly reach its ideal form. With firm resolve, I hit the Confirm button. Is the host sure they want to upgrade to combined mobile base mode? Of course. Boom. Like a sonic boom, the mobile base began to shake violently. I felt brilliant rays of light surround me as the mobile base entered its transformation process. Even sitting inside, I could clearly feel the miraculous changes happening all around me. I couldn't see the whole thing from the outside, but I knew this was a pivotal metamorphosis. Outside, the zombies stared at the mobile base. A hint of unease flickered in their eyes, and they even began to back away. It was as if they sensed a steel monster awakening, preparing to show its fangs. In the blinding light, the small bus continued to transform. Mobile base modification progress. 20%, 40%, 60%. 3 hours passed. Boom. A sound like thunder echoed. I looked up. Before me was a completely different machine, radiating a sense of future technology. The silver-gray hull gleamed with a cold metallic luster. The vehicle was no longer just a means of transport. It looked like a mobile war fortress. The body was massive, and the tires at the bottom could retract, switching into a nautical form, truly realizing the ability to travel on both land and sea. The previous second and third modes had all been merged into one unified entity. The unified mobile base was now gargantuan, with a staggering weight of 200 tons. It was, in every sense, a steel monster. Unified mobile base modification complete, the starseed's voice rang out. Would you like to start the mobile base description? I tried to suppress my excitement and calmly replied, Start. Vehicle model, mobile base, unified mode, also known as the mobile base, fortress class. As the starseed mentioned the spatial configuration, the image before me zoomed into the interior of the mobile base. As the perspective shifted, I realized the mobile base had a total of 3 floors. The first floor consisted of the living room and kitchen. The second floor had two spacious, luxurious bedrooms. The third floor was the combat room, and now it truly lived up to its name. Arc fire windows were preset with weapon mounts. All four sides of the combat room could open and rotate flexibly, ready to support combat from any direction. I could also see clear empty areas in the combat room, upgrade space for future functions. Additionally, a completely new room had appeared. The main control room was located right next to the cockpit. Inside, there was only a single chair, a position equivalent to a captain on a ship. Sitting here, I could not only monitor everything inside and outside the mobile base, but also directly issue orders to open the laboratories. This included the biological lab, the energy extraction room, and the mutant plant cultivation research room. The lights in these rooms were already on, proving they were ready for operation. However, a few other areas were still grayed out. Only one of them had a visible name, Military Factory. Gray represented unactivated areas, but having a name meant the conditions for construction were met, like having a permit ready. I sat in the main control room, my consciousness fully returning to reality. This vehicle, it really is a mobile fortress, integrating living, combat, and research. I'd thought from the beginning that my mobile base would become a massive island of safety roaming the apocalyptic wasteland. In the future, it might even move across the sea, land, and air. Nothing would stand in its way. Even if the Earth is covered in scars, this mobile base will be a piece of peace and prosperity. Now, that idea has been partially realized. The mobile base has taken the form of a massive safe haven. I decided to name it Shering. Immediately, two large black characters, Shering, appeared on the front of the vehicle. The strokes were bold, thick, and sharp. They stood out against the silver-gray body, looking less like spray paint and more like they had been part of the hull from the very beginning. Right after that, the system presented the option to activate camouflage mode. I was a bit surprised. Even after being modified into a mobile base, it could still use camouflage? But thinking about it, its current form was indeed too conspicuous. The small bus form definitely wouldn't work anymore, so I'd have to camouflage it to look as close to the old shape as possible. I ordered a scan for a camouflage shape, then activated the mobile base. When I stepped on the gas, an unprecedented surge of excitement rushed through me. This was the first time the mobile base was officially operational. The moment the pedal hit the floor, I felt like I had just woken a sleeping giant. The engine roared like a wild beast. Despite weighing 200 tons, the vehicle surged forward after just one stomp on the gas. Dozens of massive tires crushed the ground simultaneously as the mobile base roared away, sweeping aside everything in its path. Low-hanging wires, cars parked by the road. Everything was hooked, crushed, and tossed aside. The vehicle was like a steel rhino, charging straight ahead, unstoppable. The zombies shrieked in a frenzy when they saw the massive vehicle suddenly charge at them, but against the mobile base, they were nothing more than tiny mice. They were all knocked aside, sent flying, and crushed. I sat in the vehicle, my focus absolute. The feeling of flattening every obstacle and sweeping everything away. It was truly exhilarating. With this vehicle, I no longer have the slightest fear of the forces backing Han Yuan. The system automatically scanned along the road. Truck scan, failed. Refrigerated truck scan, failed. Cars were out of the question. Until the system announced, City Tour bus scan, successful. I immediately looked around, my eyes landing on a large double-decker bus parked in the middle of the boulevard. It had a dark blue body and a vintage-style front, looking quite unique. A thought flashed through my mind. It felt like a scaled-up, upgraded version of the small bus, like two buses stacked on top of each other. Of course, that was just my personal take. In reality, there were many differences, and seeing this kind of bus in the apocalypse was a bit strange. But compared to the mobile base's original form, it was much less conspicuous. Besides, despite its size, this bus still shared some similarities with the small bus, making it easier for me to accept. The small bus had been with me for a long time, and I'm a bit of a sentimental person. I didn't want the vehicle to change completely after the modification. Since the scan was successful, I'll take this one, I ordered. The Starseed immediately began the modification. Very quickly, a double-decker city tour bus replaced the mobile base's original aggressive look. I changed the color to silver gray and attached the two characters, Shi-ing, to the body, replacing the license plate that no longer mattered in the apocalypse. Information display. Type C, mobile-based Shi-ing, Fortress class, camouflaged as a city tour bus. I rubbed my chin, thinking to myself, a tour bus this big still looks cooler than the old small bus, doesn't it? I wonder what Jiang Zhuiying and Ren Shiyu's faces will look like when I drive this back. Just then, I received a message from Ing. Tao Zi is awake. I drove the bus back to our temporary residence. Jiang Zhuiying was still waiting at the door. As soon as she saw the bus, she went on high alert, sparks flickering in her eyes. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan raised their guns almost at the same time. Don't be nervous. That's Brother Jiang, Ren Shiyu spoke up, though a hint of surprise crossed her eyes too, as I was always giving her unexpected surprises. The bus stopped in front of the door opened, and I stepped down. Jiang Zhuiying immediately ran over, her eyes wide as she peered into the bus, letting out a cry of amazement. Then she ran a lap around the vehicle, constantly marveling at it. She turned back and grabbed my hand, shaking it hard, excitedly firing off questions about where I got the bus and if she'd have her own room. I couldn't help but laugh helplessly, pinching her cheek and telling her that if she kept shaking me, my arm really would break. I told her this was our new ride, and we'd be using it from now on. Zhang Hai couldn't help but ask where the old small bus went, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Because even with just a glance, anyone could tell this bus was extraordinary. It was 2 or 3 times larger than the old one. I rolled my eyes at him and told him he was overthinking it. This bus is the old small bus. I just modified it. Zhang Hai gave an embarrassed laugh, reaching out to touch the hull as he walked around it, unable to stop praising it. To a car enthusiast like him, this was the fighter jet of the bus world. Furthermore, based on what he'd seen from the small bus, he was certain there was even more terrifying combat power hidden inside. Ren Shiyu then asked why I modified it into a tour bus. Did it have a special meaning, like going on a tour of the apocalypse? I blanked for a moment. Being asked that made me feel a bit awkward, so I just asked back if she thought it looked good. I even briefly wondered if I should have scanned a motorhome instead. Ren Shiyu nodded, but no matter how I looked at it, she didn't seem sincere. I gave a light cough and said seriously that I'm a sentimental person with deep feelings, and a bus and a small bus are naturally related. Ren Shiyu's gaze immediately became even stranger. Was that deep feeling the same as what I had for Yusin, Zero, and even that Xiang Shuahai I met before? Then she turned and walked into the house. Watching her back disappear, I stood there dazed, not understanding what was going on. Jiang Zhuiying glanced at me, acting like a grown-up as she shook her head and sighed about how complicated the adult world is. She told me to handle it myself, which earned her a light flick on the head and a scolding for being a brat. Still, I couldn't help but wonder. Ren Shiyu had indeed been colder to me lately, as if she were sulking about something. But she wasn't the petty type to hold a silent grudge like that. Jiang Zhuiying yelped, clutching her head and reminding me to go check on Tao Zi. I suddenly remembered and hurried into the house, pushing my doubts aside for now. Outside, Jiang Zhuiying, Zhang Hai, and the others were still happily exploring the bus, even calling Zero and Ing over. They looked like they were touring a new toy. In the bedroom, Tao Zi lay on the bed. Her face was pale, but her eyes had regained their spark. Li Yusin stood by her side, and Wei Fei sat close by, her face full of joy, though her eyes were still a bit red and swollen. Tao Zi gratefully thanked Li Yusin for saving her, saying she probably would have turned into a zombie if not for her. Li Yusin smiled and replied that it was all at my request. If she wanted to thank someone, she should thank me. I was the one who agreed to let them on the bus. Just then I walked in. As soon as she saw me, Tao Zi's eyes lit up, and a radiant smile spread across her face. She hurried out of bed to thank me, but her body was so weak she nearly fell. I quickly caught her, and she tumbled right into my arms. I clearly felt the soft, supple sensation against my chest, along with a faint scent wafting over. Even though I was used to being around many beauties, this situation still made me feel awkward, especially with 2 other beautiful women standing right there. Tao Zi blushed and lowered her head to apologize. I helped her back onto the bed and told her not to be so formal since she hadn't recovered yet. She smiled and nodded, her voice soft. Li Yusin watched Tao Zi's expression, her heart stirring as she sighed inwardly. Another peach blossom blooming, she thought. Too bad she's run into a stone. I had no idea that the former college belle was looking at me with such deep thought. I just turned to Tao Zi and asked about her time in the paranormal strike team. Did you hear any news? Did Han Yuan's people ever mention a specific organization? Tao Zi thought for a moment and then shook her head, and I couldn't hide my slight disappointment. Han Yuan had said they didn't have a code name, likely for security and to avoid being traced. I followed up by asking if Han Yuan had mentioned anything strange. Tao Zi thought a bit more and then let out an ah. She said he had mentioned HQ Energy and someone called the Big Boss. I immediately grabbed her shoulders, pressing her for more. Tao Zi blushed at the touch and told me to let her remember. Then she said Han Yuan mentioned reporting the Doomworm incident to his superiors, and they were planning to reward him. The person he spoke of was likely Luo Jiafeng in Qinghai City. As a mental-type paranormal, Tao Zi's memory was almost never wrong. Even a name mentioned only once was etched clearly in her mind. Qinghai City, Luo Jiafeng. My eyes lit up. I finally had a lead on that organization. Otherwise, it would be incredibly difficult to deal with them if they stayed hidden in the shadows. As Han Yuan said, his death and my acquisition of the Doom Core would definitely reach the ears of that organization. And since the Doom Core was so important, they would never let it go easily. It was better to strike first and gain the upper hand. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. As for the Doom Core, they probably never imagined it was currently sitting right inside this bus. It had become a power source combined with fuel, acting like a gas tank, providing continuous power to the mobile base. I looked toward the Jiangning safety zone and said we should head there first, as things must be in total chaos by now. Sure enough, at the Jiangning safety zone, people who didn't know the full story were busy speculating. Some said the rebelling Doomworm had killed Han Yuan. Others claimed it was a level 2 mutant zombie or something even stronger, while some suspected a mutant beast. But on Commander Huang's desk lay a detailed report. Commissioner Luo read the report 2 or 3 times, still finding it hard to believe. Just the act of destroying the Doomworm or killing Han Yuan in front of an entire tank battalion was enough to shake the whole safety zone. Yet all of that was centered around one small team, one individual. It completely overturned the long-standing military view that paranormal teams weren't important enough. When someone mentioned making him confess his crimes, Commissioner Luo coldly retorted that the report clearly stated the Shi-Ing team handled the Doomworm. What excuse is there to arrest a hero who saved the entire safety zone? Besides, the man could kill Han Yuan right in front of a tank battalion. Who are you planning to send to arrest him? Or are you going to dispatch a massive unit just to make us the laughingstock of the world? One commissioner hesitantly mentioned the 2 professors in the research institute who were close to me. But as soon as he finished, General Zhang's eyes turned sharp and cold. He demanded to know if they were planning to touch the research institute's professors. He stated firmly that he had personally brought them into the institute and would absolutely not allow anyone to bother them. He even warned that if anyone dared try, their head might not stay on their shoulders. The commissioner angrily shot back, feeling threatened, but General Zhang only gave a contemptuous glance and coldly mentioned the name Chu Zhongshan, the commissioner of the Zhonghai Safety Zone Military Commission, and his shocking death. That one sentence made the commissioner turn pale. Even Commissioner Luo and the others were startled, realizing that the person involved in that case was also me. At this point, the commissioner was truly flustered, not wanting to admit he was being threatened by a paranormal team. But compared to Chu Zhongshan, he was just a man with no real power, nothing to be confident about. Chu Zhongshan's death made him feel the danger closing in, and he also remembered that the Shi-Ing team had never been an ordinary paranormal team. Because right on the city walls, everyone had witnessed the Doomworm erupt and then be destroyed. That wasn't something a normal paranormal team could do. The initial plan to recruit me vanished along with it, as he realized I was someone both arrogant and dangerous. It was best not to harbor any thoughts of commanding such a person. Although Han Yuan wasn't from the Jiangning safety zone, according to the battalion commander's report, he had many irrational behaviors during this operation. General Zhang continued his analysis, noting that some pointed out Han Yuan might have known more about the Doomworm but failed to report it. Instead, He led a team to try and capture it alive, directly creating a massive risk to the safety of the entire Jiangning area. At this point, Commander Huang finally opened his eyes. He had been silently thinking until now. He asked General Zhang for his opinion in a low voice, and the answer was clear: report the truth to the higher-ups. If they want to arrest him, let them do it themselves. Commander Huang looked pensive. If he let me leave, the higher-ups' anger might very well fall on the Jiangning area. But in the current situation, the safety zones weren't exactly united. Zombies and mutant beasts were still the main threats. It really wasn't worth the distraction to deal with the Shuying team. Finally, he nodded in agreement. The others remained silent. No one said another word. In the Jiangning Safety Zone command room, for the first time, these powerful figures had to bow their heads to a team of survivors. The information about me killing Han Yuan was completely suppressed, with only a secret report sent to the Huaxiao region. At the same time, another piece of news was quietly funneled through secret channels to the major safety zones. In Qinghai City, a tall figure held a secret letter, his eyes stopping on the names Shuying Team and mine. In an instant, flames erupted from his palm, incinerating the letter. He coldly thought that the Doom Core had fallen into my hands, but he couldn't leave at this time. And since I would surely stay away from the major safety zones, he ordered a bounty to be issued, letting the survivor teams outside hunt us down. No matter how strong a team is, it's hard to withstand constant harassment and assassination attempts. Furthermore, not just the Doom Core, but the bus itself was incredibly valuable. Keeping the bus would somewhat make up for the loss. In many other safety zones, similar scenes were playing out simultaneously. Most believed the Shuying team would eventually be wiped out. I would die, and the bus would fall into someone else's hands. Not long after, a secret bounty was delivered to many survivor teams, leaving many shocked by the massive reward, ranging from weapons to evolution crystals. That sky-high reward quickly gave rise to countless people wanting to try their luck. Some even felt pity for the Shuying team, because the moment they showed their faces, they would be hunted relentlessly, like falling into an even deeper level of apocalyptic hell. As for me, I was completely unaware of any of this. At this moment, I stood on a building in the Jiangning Safety Zone, looking toward the Research Institute with Ren Xiyu by my side. She said both Professors Su were safe, and there was nothing to worry about. We had been waiting here all day. I nodded slightly, assuming General Zhang had kept his promise to protect them. That put my mind at ease. Even if they weren't directly threatened, I still didn't want the professors to be disturbed. Otherwise, I'd be forced to give certain people a warning. I pulled my hat low, left the building with Ren Xiyu, and quickly disappeared from the street. The people walking by, and even the patrols, seemed completely oblivious to us. With Ren Xiyu's current mental strength, infiltrating the safety zone was child's play. Besides, most people on the street were ordinary folks. Even if we walked right past them, no one would notice. When we reached the wall, I took something out of my pocket, or rather, a fluffy creature that looked like a kitten. I called out "Luo Luo" and tossed it onto the ground. Immediately, Luo Luo puffed up, quickly turning into a giant air ball. I grabbed Ren Xiyu's waist and jumped. With only a very soft whoosh, we both cleared the wall. Luo Luo deflated, using the thrust to fly after us, landing neatly on my shoulder. I fed it a piece of evolution crystal. Its ruby-red eyes immediately lit up, and it let out a chit-chit sound before turning into a thin, flat sheet. Only its tail, ears, and large eyes remained moving. I grabbed its tail and leaped down. Like a parachute, we both landed softly on the ground without making a sound. Ren Xiyu and I moved through the Jiangning safety zone without being detected by anyone. No one saw the Shuying team appear. But among the high-level leadership of the safety zone, the wariness toward me never diminished even a little. "Brother Jiang, where are we going now?" Zero leaned against the car door handle, asking lazily. She was becoming more and more like a cat. Quiet and cute when still, but dangerous when she moved. I replied that we were going to find someone, Han Yuan's superior. He's the only one I'm certain belongs to the organization we're looking for. I absolutely cannot let someone like that go. I looked toward a corner of the sofa and asked if they wanted to come along. Tao Zi and Wei Feifei were sitting there obediently. Tao Zi lowered her head, stammering, and looked to Wei Feifei for help. I understood immediately. She just wanted to stay with me. After a moment of hesitation, Wei Feifei spoke up. She said Tao Zi hadn't fully recovered yet, and they had nowhere else to go. If we had to stop at other safety zones or bases, they would leave the vehicle then. She could do chores, fight, anything. They even brought their own rations and wouldn't consume the vehicle's resources. Her large, pleading eyes made it hard for me to refuse. Just then, Zhu Ying bluntly chimed in, saying it was no big deal. Her brother was a good guy and very generous to beautiful women. I gave her a look, wanting to flick her forehead. I was clearly letting them stay out of pity and because they seemed like good people. But the way she said it made it sound like something else, causing both Tao Zi and Wei Feifei to blush. I calmly told them they could stay for now and share a room with Zhu Ying. We'd figure it out when we found a suitable place. My words made Tao Zi look slightly disappointed, but she still nodded in thanks. She looked up and asked if she could call me Brother Jiang. I said she could do as she pleased, and she happily called out the name, a sweet smile blooming on her face. Zhu Ying stood by, shaking her head in mock exasperation, her eyes twinkling with mischief as she watched Ren Xiyu coldly stand up and head to the second floor. Who knows what kind of nonsense was going through that girl's head? The bus continued south, heading to places I had never set foot in before the apocalypse. The scenery outside gradually changed. Southern vegetation appeared more and more, growing so lush that the road seemed swallowed by the jungle. The buildings peeking through the trees were mere reminders of the former prosperity. Now, they were a paradise for zombies and mutant beasts. Wando Town appeared before us. It was once a large industrial town, densely populated, even more developed than many small cities. I said there might still be survivors here. If we met anyone, we'd ask for the location of Qinghai City. Earlier, when we went to Qinghai, I only saw a dead city full of zombies and energy surges so dangerous that even the starseed warned me. I didn't want to touch it unless necessary. After leaving Qinghai, Wando was the third town we passed through. As soon as we entered, signs of survivors were clear. Shops had been looted, shelves overturned, and anything useful had been taken long ago. Just then, a series of gunshots rang out, accompanied by the shrieks of zombies. I immediately ordered Zero to drive over and check it out. A moment later, the situation ahead became clear. A few survivors were holed up in a shop, surrounded by dozens of zombies, including one particularly large and agile one. It seemed to be leading the pack, putting the people inside in grave danger. They used shells to block the door, firing through gaps, but they barely hit anything. That large mutant zombie appeared extremely calm, not charging in, but seemingly waiting for the right moment. I could clearly hear panicked voices from inside the shop. They were cursing that the monster was waiting for them to run out of ammo before moving in for the kill. Dong was already wounded, and he was the strongest in the team. If they ran out of bullets, no one would be left to stop that thing. The survivors' faces were deathly pale, fear etched in their eyes. They had witnessed a teammate being dragged out by that monster just because of a moment's distraction. Then he was torn apart right before their eyes. His screams seemed to still echo in their ears. Dong lay in a corner, a gruesome wound on his arm. His face was as white as paper, and his expression darkened as he listened to his teammates. Beside him, a girl with dyed blonde hair, dressed very fashionably, was crying and trembling, asking if they were going to die here. But Dong remained silent. The girl kept calling his name. If Dong hadn't been leading them, she never would have followed this team. She thought it was an easy mission, but they ended up in a death trap. Just then, the sound of an engine echoed from a distance. Someone frantically asked if reinforcements had arrived, but the zombies blocked their view, so no one could see anything. One survivor shouted a warning that there was a very smart mutant zombie outside with a pack following its orders. Before he could finish, a thunderous boom rang out. The zombies blocking the shop door were sent flying like bowling pins. A massive black shadow crashed straight into the shop, slamming into the shelves blocking the door. It was covered in blood, with a large hole in its head. Half of its skull was gone. It was the mutant zombie. The entire shop went silent. The man's words died in his throat. When they looked up, they saw a massive bus parked right in front of the door, blocking out the sun. On the front of the bus, the two characters, Shi-Ing, were clearly visible. No one could speak. They were all still in shock. A click sounded, the bus door opened, and a beautiful short-haired girl stepped down. She had almost no wasted movement, appearing in front of the shop in the blink of an eye. It was unsettling to watch, as if the eyes couldn't adapt to that kind of speed. A cold, bright dagger flashed in her hand. She stepped on the mutant zombie's chest, flicked her wrist, and a mutant core was already nestled in her fair palm. I heard the survivors whispering that she was a paranormal nearly at level 2. Level 2 paranormals at their base were already considered powerful, though they weren't terrified, just impressed. A beautiful and lethal paranormal like her was truly rare. Besides, they had never heard of someone like her in the area. Ah Dong stood up, forcing a smile, and introduced himself as Song Hedong, the team leader. He had some reputation at the base, so he politely invited the girl back to their base to show his gratitude. His eyes sparkled, clearly attracted by her looks and strength. But the short-haired girl didn't even spare him a glance. She just turned back toward the bus and said she'd gotten the core. Ah Dong froze, realizing she wasn't the leader of the bus. Immediately after, I stepped off the vehicle. As my feet hit the ground, I felt everyone's eyes lock onto me. Zero followed obediently behind me, her presence immediately overwhelming the survivors. It gave them the feeling of facing the biggest boss at their own base. One survivor quickly said that since we saved them, they'd answer any questions honestly. I asked directly about the Qinghai City Safety Zone. They all said they'd heard of it, but when I asked for the specific location, they just looked at each other, unable to say a word. My heart sank, a wave of disappointment washing over me. Just then, Ah Dong spoke up, saying someone at their camp might know. He suggested we follow them back to check. I gave him a look and then nodded. Lead the way. Ah Dong said he needed to treat his wound first. Zero turned to me and asked if I really wanted to follow them back, since we didn't know the situation there. I gave a faint smile. No need to worry. Whether it's a tiger's den or a wolf's lair, there's nothing to fear. As I said that, my eyes were full of confidence. Zero was momentarily startled, then she smiled too. At that moment, I realized that along with my growing strength and the new bus, I was gradually developing the aura of a truly powerful man. Just then, the fashionable blonde girl walked over with a smile. She was wearing a camisole and a short skirt, with a high-end designer coat draped over her shoulders. The material was premium, the tailoring exquisite. In the apocalypse, brands meant nothing. But to keep things like this, you either had strength or a decent backer. She clearly didn't look like someone with power. She introduced herself as Xie Shasha, saying she was very grateful we saved them. As she spoke, she patted her chest, her ample bosom bouncing with the movement. Even Zero, standing beside me, felt uncomfortable, as despite her doll-like face, her body was still as petite as a young girl's. Xie Shasha stared at me, asking for my name with a smile so sweet it was almost sickening. Meanwhile, Ah Dong, who was bandaging his wound inside the shop, watched this with cold eyes. I knew she was the foster sister of a big shot in the camp. Ah Dong had been chasing her for a long time, pampering her in every way. He only brought her out this time for some excitement, never expecting to run into a mutant zombie. To me, Ah Dong felt no gratitude. If I hadn't shown up, he still could have escaped. Only his teammates would have died. But my appearance immediately drew Xie Shasha's infatuated gaze, making Ah Dong curse inwardly. He was even more annoyed seeing Zero, who was even prettier than Shasha, standing obediently by my side. And since he couldn't sense any clear energy fluctuations from me, he was both suspicious and uneasy. Xie Shasha kept chatting, mentioning Jiangbei and asking if I was a student at Jiangbei University. She was all smiles, while I only gave brief replies. I soon realized she knew nothing useful and quickly lost interest, but she didn't notice and kept rambling on. Just then, Ah Dong walked over and said he was done bandaging, ready to head out. Xie Shasha looked disappointed and asked if she could tour my bus. Ah Dong joined in, smiling and saying he was curious about the vehicle. I shook my head bluntly. I'm not in the habit of letting strangers on my bus. Rejected, Xie Shasha was disappointed, while Ah Dong's face stiffened. Rage flared in his heart. He felt I was too arrogant and had made him lose face. Especially in front of Xie Shasha. In his eyes, the bus was just unique, nothing special. He forced a smile, said my bus was mysterious, and then turned away, calling his men to the cars. Ah Dong's team had 2 cars left. When they started, Thick black smoke billowed out. Their rugged appearance screamed apocalypse style. Dong hit the gas, glancing smugly my way. He thought that kind of car was for real men, while my bus was just for tourists. But when he looked back, I had already turned and walked toward the bus, completely ignoring the roar of his engine. Sitting in the car, Xia Shasha still looked at me with infatuation, saying she finally knew my name, Jiang Lushi. It sounds so special. Dong coldly told her she'd better not pay attention to that pretty boy. What are you saying? Don't talk nonsense. Xia Shasha, her secret thoughts exposed, retorted in both embarrassment and anger. She bit her lip and added that Jiang Lushi wasn't a pretty boy. Dong was just jealous because he was more handsome. Dong coldly reminded her not to forget that Jiang Lushi wasn't from the camp. Her foster brother would absolutely not approve. Xia Shasha's foster brother was Xia Feng, a famous and powerful figure in the camp. A true level 2 paranormal. No matter how stubborn Shasha was, she was as obedient as a lamb in front of Xia Feng. When the apocalypse first broke out, Xia Feng took Shasha in as his foster sister because they shared a surname and had known each other since the start. As for his biological sister, she had turned into a zombie in the early days, and Xia Feng had to end her life himself. Hearing Dong use Xia Feng to threaten her, Shasha huffed, telling him he was meddling. In her mind, she thought she just needed to get Jiang Lushi to join the camp. Dong looked at Shasha with dark eyes. Her change in attitude toward him made him pin a heavy debt on my head. Under the guidance of Dong's 2 cars, our large bus followed, heading toward the southern outskirts of Wando town. The further we went, the more factories appeared. I realized we had entered a dense industrial zone, mostly related to steel. I didn't know much about Wando before, but now I saw it was a steel industrial town. This industrial zone was different from the town center. That place was full of zombies, but here, there was almost no one in sight. Either there were few zombies to begin with, or they had been cleared out long ago. The convoy quickly stopped in front of a large factory. Inside was a massive steel-framed workshop, entirely reinforced with steel. Dried bloodstains mottled the walls. Abandoned trucks were parked outside, fitted with gun turrets. Those dark muzzles immediately pointed at the bus. I didn't care in the slightest. Those things couldn't threaten this vehicle. Dong drove to the main gate and leaned out, shouting that it was him. Several machine guns poked out from the guardhouse as they asked why a car was missing and what that bus was. Dong frowned and said they had bad luck this time. The bus just happened to pass by and help out, so they followed to ask for some info. He spoke loudly so I could hear too. The people in the guardhouse hummed and signaled them through. The gate, wrapped in barbed wire and steel bars, slowly opened. The men standing behind the gate glared at the bus with fierce expressions. Rin Xiu softly said there were several strong energy signatures here, with one being particularly powerful. I asked how it compared to Du Changfei at the Heyuan safety zone. She thought for a moment and said it was about the same. Zhu Ying, standing nearby, remarked that there were some strong paranormals, but her voice held no fear. After all, she was a level 2 paranormal herself. Dong drove closer and said this was their steel depot. He told us to follow behind and not wander off, his words carrying a warning that camp rules were strict. If we didn't follow them, he wouldn't be able to help. Zhu Ying immediately looked disdainful. We've been through places much more dangerous than this. That warning wasn't worth noting. Dong saw I was still calm, which annoyed him. But he quickly hid it with a smile, saying he'd introduce us to the boss. Maybe the boss would be interested in a survivor team from outside. Then we could ask whatever we wanted. He told us to get off the bus and go inside. I refused flatly. No need. I didn't come here to meet your boss. A cold glint flashed in Dong's eyes for a split second. Then he smiled again, saying he'd go report so the boss could come out and welcome the honored guests. He signaled his subordinates. Xia Shasha rolled her eyes and slyly asked to go along. Dong didn't refuse, and they both walked into the factory. After they left, I turned to Rin Xiu and asked for her impression of Dong. Rin Xiu said coldly, "Brother Jiang, do you even need to ask me? You must have seen through him already." I nodded slightly. That guy Dong is definitely plotting something. But I didn't care much. My goal from start to finish was just to ask for directions. If we could talk properly, fine. If I had to use other means to get what I wanted, I wouldn't mind causing them a bit of trouble. Meanwhile, Dong and Xie Shasha had entered the factory. The interior was complex, divided into many different areas. In a large room, a massive, muscular man sat on a large sofa. He was bald, his scalp covered in fierce scars. His entire body was covered in tattoos, his thick arms pulsing with patterns. He wore a necklace made of animal teeth, and his whole being radiated a savage aura that made others look away. Dong walked up to him and bowed respectfully. Brother Xie. Xie Shasha also stepped forward, not daring to breathe loudly as she called out to him. Xie Feng grunted, glanced at Dong, and said, "Fine. You brought Shasha back safely." Dong replied, "It was my duty." Xie Feng snorted and looked at him. "Why are you still standing there? What is it?" Dong hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "Last time I heard the bosses mention a bounty. I wonder if it's real?" As he spoke, he carefully watched Xie Feng's face. Normally, the boss's business wasn't something a subordinate like him should ask about. Sure enough, Xie Feng laughed coldly. "What does a bounty have to do with you? Mind your own business. Don't dream of things that don't belong to you." Dong forced a laugh. "I wouldn't dare. It's just that we met a group today, and I think they look a lot like the ones on the bounty." Xie Feng immediately turned his head, his eyes flashing. "Really?" Dong said quickly. "Their bus has the characters Shering on it. It's definitely the Shering team." Xie Feng slapped his thigh hard. "Excellent." Xie Shasha was horrified. "Dong, what are you talking about?" "Brother, that team saved me. If not for them, Dong wouldn't have been able to protect me. How could they be the people on the bounty?" Dong smiled sinisterly. "Shasha, why don't you tell us their captain's name?" Xie Shasha's heart went cold. She hesitated. She felt clearly that if she spoke, I would definitely be in trouble. Xie Feng's eyes were like a hawk's, staring at her. "Speak." Xie Shasha was all too familiar with that look. Every time he was about to kill someone, he looked like that. Finally, she didn't dare lie. She grit her teeth. "His name is Jiang Lushi." "Jiang Lushi. That's right, it's him." Xie Feng laughed savagely. "Where are they?" Dong also smiled triumphantly. "Brother Xie, they're right here in our camp. I recognized them early on, but pretended not to know, then led them right in." Xie Shasha looked at Dong in disbelief. She never expected him to be so insidious. Xie Feng laughed loudly. "The bounty for this team has been sent everywhere. They're a fat piece of meat. Everyone wants a bite. I didn't expect them to walk right into the trap." To him, this was like a bag of money falling from the sky. "Well done." Dong was overjoyed. He suppressed his emotions and said, "Sharing Brother Xie's burdens is what I should do." In his heart, he calculated that if he succeeded this time, Xie Feng might very well give Shasha to him. Then he'd have a solid backer. Thinking of this, he even wanted to thank me. Xie Shasha was worried. "Brother, what are you going to do to Jiang Lushi?" Xie Feng said coldly, "What else?" "Kill him, of course." Shasha's face turned pale. She said hurriedly, "Brother, how about I invite him to join our camp? If he becomes one of us, there's no need to kill him." Dong just stood by and sneered. In his eyes, Shasha was just a naive girl who didn't understand the cruelty of this place. Sure enough, Xie Feng just gave her a cold look. His icy gaze made her tremble, and she didn't dare say more. "Where are they?" he asked. Dong replied, "I invited them in, but they're too arrogant to get off the bus. They even demanded the boss come out to meet them." Xie Feng smiled meaningfully. "Fine, we'll go out and meet them." Dong grinned. Xie Feng ordered, "Go call Wang Laosan and Chen Yueshue." Dong was startled. "You're calling both of them?" Those two were the other bosses of the steel depot. Chen Yueshue, in particular, was even stronger than Xie Feng. According to Dong, Xie Feng alone should have been enough. Xie Feng tapped his finger on the armrest. According to the news, the Shering team has some skill. End it quickly to avoid complications. Even a lion uses its full strength to catch a rabbit. This was the Steel Depot's territory. It was like catching a turtle in a jar. He was certain of victory, not considering me or my team a threat at all. Xie Shasha sat nearby, her hands and feet cold. It's over. Not just her brother, but Wang Laosan and Chen Yueshue were going to act too. Especially Chen Yueshue, who was famous for his brutality and loved to torture his opponents before killing them. Even without knowing my full strength, she felt I couldn't possibly be stronger than those men. In her eyes, my team and I were as good as dead. In this post-apocalyptic world, there would be no miracles. When Dong led Xie Feng and the others out of the factory, They immediately saw my bus still parked leisurely there. Wang Laosan frowned. Boss, yeah. Wasn't the report about a small bus? The bounty clearly states that if we can secure that small bus, the reward will be massive. Wang Laosan was a small, thin man who didn't look like much, but the axe on his back was nearly as big as he was. Every step he took was heavy, leaving deep marks on the ground. I knew well that many had seen him split the hard skull of a mutant beast with a single swing. Xie Feng smiled thinly. Wang Laosan, why care? So what if it's a bus? It's even bigger than that small bus. Wang Laosan turned to the other man. Brother Chen, what do you think? Chen Yueshue was a thin, middle-aged man wearing traditional Chinese clothes and a string of beads on his wrist. He didn't radiate any killing intent at all. But I knew those who judged him by his appearance died miserably. Even Xie Feng was silent now. At the steel depot, strength was everything. And when Chen Yueshue was present, everyone else had to listen. Capture them all. Find out where the small bus is, then kill them and feed them to the zombies. Chen Yueshue spoke coldly. He wasn't bluffing. I'd heard he kept zombies as pets, enemies he'd captured and turned into monsters. Among them was even a woman who had once dared to reject him. Wang Laosan licked his lips, a bloodthirsty grin on his face. Leave it to me. Brother Chen doesn't need to lift a finger. I'll drag them all out. Ah Dong stood by, his heart racing with excitement. He was already thinking about Zero, thinking about his share, thinking about personally grinding me into the dirt to watch me beg. Captain Jiang, I've brought our bosses to see you. Ah Dong smiled brightly, faking enthusiasm. Wang Laosan stood right behind him, ready to deliver a fatal blow. I cracked the window and glanced at them. You guys sure took your time. Wang Laosan laughed. I heard you wanted to ask something. Ask away. I want to know where Qinhai City is. I said, Qinhai? Isn't that a base? What a coincidence. I was just about to invite you there, he said with a meaningful grin. I smiled too. What a coincidence indeed. Ah Dong chimed in. The bosses are here. You should get off the bus so we can talk properly. I looked at him and smiled. You really want me to get off, don't you? Ah Dong just smiled and didn't answer. The factory gate was closed, and they had men everywhere. I couldn't escape even if I had wings. Fine. I'll get off, I said. Ah Dong froze, then couldn't help but laugh inwardly. In his eyes, I was just a fool. Xie Shasha stood nearby, frantically winking at me, but I pretended not to see. Xie Feng gave her an icy look, and she didn't dare do anything else. Shasha, stop dreaming. They're definitely dying today, Ah Dong said. I couldn't see it, but I knew Xie Shasha's hands and feet were cold. Still, she hoped my team and I could somehow escape. The bus door opened automatically, and I stepped down. Wang Laosan said nothing, his hand already tight on his axe handle, a grin plastered on his face. Ah Dong stood by, his mind already picturing me being crushed into a pulp. As for me, I just gave a faint smile. Bang, bang. 2 guns were in my hands before anyone could see them, and the moment they appeared, they fired. Wang Laosan sensed the danger and instinctively dove to the side, but within my control, all his movements slowed down like a slow-motion replay. I saw every step, every move. The bullets tore through his legs and body, blood spraying everywhere. When he hit the ground, he had several more bullet holes in him. If he weren't a paranormal, he'd be dead by now. In an instant, Wang Laosan was gravely wounded, not even having time to swing his axe. He roared in pain, "You're dead." Xie Feng and Chen Yueshue reacted immediately. Both of them erupted with power at the same time, charging straight at me. I kept a faint smile on my lips as I looked at them. And right then, the bus door slammed shut. Xie Shasha's eyes widened in shock. She didn't expect me to act so boldly, and she certainly didn't expect my marksmanship to be so terrifying. Firing 2 guns simultaneously from different angles, even the best sharpshooter in their camp couldn't do that. Wang Laosan's movements were so fast she couldn't even see them, yet I still hit him. But now, Xie Feng had made his move. Could I handle it? Xie Shasha's heart was filled with worry. Boom. Xie Feng threw a heavy punch at the bus door. But contrary to his expectations, the door didn't break. It didn't even budge. What the hell is this vehicle? Xie Feng was stunned. His punch was strong enough to pierce steel, yet this hull was even harder than steel. Virum. The bus suddenly started up. Stop it, Chen Yueshue said coldly. In his eyes, I had just used a sneak attack to wound Wang Laosan and was clearly looking for a chance to escape. But he wouldn't let me get what I wanted. Gunfire immediately erupted everywhere. However, Dong felt something was wrong. The bus didn't charge toward the gate. Instead, it turned and headed straight for the steel depot's men. In this situation, why wasn't I taking the chance to run? Why was I actively engaging them? Even Dong found the thought absurd. He couldn't possibly understand that my goal was never just to escape. If you guys don't like talking with your mouths, then I'll choose a simpler and more direct way. I sat in the control room and spoke calmly. That simple and direct way was to crush this steel depot until they were willing to listen. The bus hadn't truly tested its full power since the upgrade, and now was the time. If Xiefeng and Chun Yueshua knew their territory was just a test track for my vehicle, I wonder what their faces would look like. Rumble, rumble. The bus engine roared fiercely. Just hearing that sound made Dong and the others freeze. The noise was so loud it sounded like a train was charging straight at them. After the upgrade, the vehicle used black light energy combined with fuel. That energy, which could devour any living thing, became terrifying when converted into kinetic energy. This was something they couldn't even begin to imagine. In my eyes, these people were just frogs in a well. And today, I'd let them know how vast the world outside really was. Bang, bang, bang. The steel depot men fired frantically at the bus. But the vehicle was now like a beast about to break its chains, carrying a savage aura and billowing flames as it charged forward. Bullets rained down on the hull, but they didn't leave a single scratch. Looking at the bus charging at them, those men couldn't help but be terrified. It felt like facing a giant monster. Instinct told them only to fear. Run. The crowd scrambled to scatter. But the bus slammed into the line of trucks blocking the way. Those who didn't run in time, desperately firing at the windshield to kill my team and me, were immediately caught in the collision. Boom. A horrific explosion rang out. The trucks were crumpled, sent flying into the air, and then slammed hard onto the ground. Those inside died the moment of impact, their bodies crushed into a pulp. The shockwave shook the surrounding vehicles, and the ground trembled violently, no different from an earthquake. Damn it, Dong couldn't help but swear. He stared wide-eyed at the scene before him, unable to believe what had just happened. This is a bus. This is clearly a monster. The trucks in front of me were nothing more than crushed toys now. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The bus tore through like a hurricane. Nothing could stop it. Bullets couldn't stop it, and humans certainly couldn't. The steel depot men fled in a panic, only wishing their parents had given them 2 more legs. No one dared stay and fire, because it was useless. At this point, Wang Laosan had recovered a bit of strength. He was still riddled with bullets, looking pathetic, but luckily he wasn't dead. Watching the bus crazily crush everything, he was so enraged his heart felt like it would explode. The Shering team, which he thought was at his mercy, had played him for a fool, and now the bus was rampaging right on his turf. Laosan, let me help you. We'll stop it together, Xiefeng said grimly. Wang Laosan gripped his axe and grit his teeth. I'm going to chop off his limbs and hang him in my bathroom. I'll piss on his face every day. The 2 of them charged forward like 2 savage wolves, aiming straight for the bus. Xiefeng roared, his body swelling several times over, his clothes torn apart by his muscles. His limbs transformed into sharp claws, his skin as hard as steel. A single punch was enough to blow up a car. As for Wang Laosan, the axe in his hand spun. When he reached the front of the bus and swung down, that power was enough to tear anything apart. Old Xie and Laosan acting together is enough. They could have died easily at first, but now, they must pay for their actions. Chun Yueshua stood in place, speaking nonchalantly as he toyed with his beads. Hearing those words, I knew Xie Shasha was panicking. Her heart pounded, because she knew exactly what the price to pay Chun Yueshua mentioned was. When she saw my bus charge out, a flicker of hope had appeared, but that cold sentence extinguished it all. In their eyes, no matter how strong the vehicle was, it was still just a vehicle. It couldn't compare to what they called absolute power. You're good at running, but let's see you run when I crush your tires. Xiefeng roared, lunging to grab the hull and slashing his claws at the tires. But the moment his claws touched them, his wrists were jolted violently. His 10 fingers throbbed with pain as if they were about to break. What the hell are these tires made of? Why are they so hard? He could flip a charging car, yet now he couldn't even scratch a tire. Just then, a shadow fell over his head. His instincts screamed danger, and Xiefeng frantically dove to the side, but he was still too slow. His shoulder stung, followed by a burning sensation. Blood immediately gushed out. He looked up and met a cold gaze. On the bus was a young girl, about 16 or 17. She leaned lightly against the window frame, a military knife in her hand. Her gaze locked onto him. "You're a level 2 paranormal?" Xiefeng said grimly. He had heard a Dong mention that there was a short-haired girl in my vehicle who was a level 2 mutant, and she was the one standing right in front of him. "Then I'll kill you first," he roared. Murderous intent flashed in Zero's eyes. She glided past the vehicle, charging straight at Xiefeng, her speed so fast it left an afterimage. On the other side, Wang Laosan had closed in. "I'm gonna kill you." Swinging his spinning axe, he aimed to smash it down on the front of the vehicle. Even if the vehicle's armor was as hard as a turtle shell, he believed a single strike would be enough to tear it all apart. Zero was engaged in combat. With Xiefeng, no one could stop him. But right at that moment, a terrifying surge of electricity suddenly shot out from the minibus, striking down on Wang Laosan's head like a lightning bolt. Damn it, he only had time to curse before being hit. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't outspeed lightning. And it wasn't just one bolt. In the blink of an eye, multiple bolts rained down consecutively. Wang Laosan could withstand one strike, but he couldn't hold up against a relentless barrage of lightning. His hair and head were scorched, smoke billowing from his entire body. The arm holding the axe went numb, trembling uncontrollably, causing the axe to drop and smash a large crater into the concrete floor. What infuriated him even more was that amidst the electric shocks, he could hear the giggling of a young girl from inside the vehicle, seemingly thoroughly enjoying electrocuting him. Wang Laosan collapsed to the ground, his entire body charred black, rage screaming in his heart. Why was he the one taking the hits every single time? Was there another level 2 mutant in the vehicle? The intel they received only said the other party was a bit of trouble and to be careful with the minibus. They had gone all out from the very beginning, yet they were still beaten to a pulp. At this moment, Wang Laosan finally understood. This wasn't a sneak attack. The opponent's strength was completely overwhelming. The moment they made a move, he was mercilessly crushed. On the other side, Xiefeng wasn't faring any better. Zero moved as fast as the wind, her figure flickering in and out of sight. Every thrust aimed straight for his weak points, while the minibus served as her perfect cover. Xiefeng's body was riddled with wounds, blood flowing endlessly, but he still couldn't touch Zero, not even the corner of her clothes. How could she be this strong? He had gathered countless resources to push his strength to its current level, but little did he know that the Shi-Ing squad had never lacked resources. With me and the mobile base backing them, Zero and Jiang Zhuiying had grown strong enough to completely crush level 2 mutants like Xiefeng and Wang Laosan. Chen Yueshue stood watching, the calm smile on his face gradually fading. As for Adong, he was so stunned his jaw dropped, looking as if he had swallowed a mallet. Was he seeing things? Not only did they fail to stop the minibus, but Xiefeng and Wang Laosan were also suffering a miserable defeat. Trembling inside, Adong tried to reassure himself as he looked over at Chen Yueshue. In his eyes, the true trump card of the Steel Camp was this man. But at the same time, an unnamed sense of unease welled up within him. Initially, he thought he had brought back a flock of fat sheep, but now it felt like he had dragged a T-Rex into their home. Thinking of that, his limbs went cold. Let me deal with them. Chen Yueshue took off the prayer beads around his wrist and stepped forward. With just a slight movement, his aura completely changed. Adong and Xieshasha, standing behind him, couldn't help but feel their hearts race. They felt as if they were facing a humanoid beast. Every step Chen Yueshue took left a faint imprint on the ground, and as he accelerated, the sound of rolling thunder echoed around him. Roar! Chen Yueshue let out a ferocious bellow, the sound threatening to tear their eardrums. He charged straight at my minibus, thrusting both hands forward, clearly intending to use his own physical strength to stop the speeding vehicle. Boom, boom. His feet planted deep into the concrete. Under his martial arts suit, his muscles bulged, power surging through every vein. He stared at the minibus with absolute confidence. As long as he stopped the vehicle, he would drag me and my teammates out of this shell and tear us apart piece by piece. When his mutant ability activated, Chun Yueshue's eyes completely changed, becoming bloodthirsty and brutal. Boss Chun is going all out. I once saw him destroy an entire base in this state. He tore everyone apart with his bare hands, and he wouldn't stop until he had killed enough. Adong said, both terrified and excited. Even people in the same base always kept their distance from Chun Yueshue, but seeing him take action now, Adong instantly felt his confidence return. Xia Shasha stood nearby, clenching her fists, her heart tightening with worry. The minibus closed in. Chun Yueshue roared, his muscular arms brimming with power, his clothes fluttering despite the lack of wind. Stop right there. He wasn't blindly confident. The vehicle was slowing down as it entered a curve in the factory area, and he had chosen the perfect moment. He firmly believed he could use human strength to halt this vehicle. Bang! His steel-like arms slammed straight into the front of the vehicle. A deafening crash echoed out. Under the impact, Chun Yueshue was pushed back 5 steps, each step leaving a foot-deep footprint in the ground. Xia Feng, Wang Laosan, and Adong all held their breath, staring intently. The piercing sound of friction between the tires and the ground rang out, and the minibus's speed gradually slowed. He did it. The group breathed a sigh of relief. Adong couldn't help but cheer in excitement. He couldn't wait for the moment me and my teammates were slaughtered. Chun Yueshue stood up straight. His muscles were torn in several places, and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, but he still looked up through the windshield and smiled. Blood-stained teeth, cold eyes, that smile sent shivers down anyone's spine. Xia Shasha, standing nearby, suddenly felt her limbs go weak. She turned to run, not daring to watch any longer. Open the door and get out. I'll give you a quick death, Chun Yueshue said calmly. But at that exact moment, he suddenly realized that a metal tube had extended from the front of the minibus, aiming right at him. What is that? Before he could react, a deadly sense of danger washed over him. This is bad. Boom. A deafening explosion rang out. A terrifying blast of air pressure erupted, faster than the speed of sound, and Chun Yueshue was the first to bear the brunt of it. He didn't even have time to scream. In an instant, his entire body was pulverized into blood and bone. The air pressure continued to sweep away everything in its path, flipping the truck and destroying all obstacles. It slammed straight into the factory gates, creating an earth-shattering boom, blowing the iron doors away and leaving a massive gaping hole. Clang! All the equipment behind the doors was destroyed, turned into a chaotic mess. In the blink of an eye, the area within dozens of meters of the minibus became as desolate as if a hurricane had just swept through. The onlookers, including Adong, felt as if their minds had been sucked into that very tornado. 1 second, he heard Chun Yueshue demanding I open the door, and the next, Chun Yueshue was nowhere to be seen. No, it wasn't that he couldn't be seen. That pool of blood on the ground was him. Xia Feng and Wang Laosan instantly fell silent. With just one strike, my minibus had obliterated Chun Yueshue and even blown away the factory's iron gates. Hearing the explosion, Xia Shasha turned her head, covering her mouth in shock, unable to believe her eyes. My teammates and I had shocked her yet again. The minibus continued to roar, charging straight into the factory. Crash, crash, crash. The mobile base's armor remained undamaged. Mobile base status stable. Windshield unaffected. Ramming function activated. Boom. A wall was smashed into a massive hole and collapsed to the ground with a resounding crash. I sat in the control room, listening to the starseed report the vehicle's status, feeling incredibly relaxed. After the mobile base evolved, its defensive capabilities had increased significantly. Ordinary collisions or a hail of bullets could no longer cause any real damage. As for its ramming power, it was vastly stronger. Just charging straight ahead was enough to deal terrifying damage. Without even needing to use the ramming spike or fuel injection, its current state alone made me feel like I was piloting a mobile war fortress. Adong and the rest could only gape as the minibus destroyed nearly half the factory in the blink of an eye. This place was originally reinforced with multiple layers of steel. Even mutant beasts would find it hard to destroy. Yet, in front of my vehicle, It was as fragile as paper. If it kept ramming like this, the entire factory would probably be leveled. Adong regretted it to the extreme. He just wanted to gouge his own eyes out. If he hadn't failed to recognize the words Shering in the first place, this wouldn't have happened. His legs began to tremble violently. Right at that moment, a deep, cold voice echoed from inside the factory. "Aren't you guys going a bit too far?" Immediately after, a figure lunged out like a tiger, stopping a short distance from the minibus. I signaled Ing to stop the vehicle, then stepped into the combat room. "I didn't expect you to actually show your face," I said calmly, my eyes glancing at the man who had just appeared. He didn't look like much, but his heavy breathing sounded like a tiger's roar, and his body was taut like a fierce beast ready to pounce. This was the true leader of the steel camp. "Boss Chun," Xiefeng and Wang Laosen called out in unison. "Shut up," Chun Ding glared, and the two instantly fell silent. He turned to me, his tone somewhat guarded. "Friend, you killed Qin Yueshue and destroyed half my base. Your anger should be appeased by now. Let's end this here and call it even." I could clearly see the wariness in his eyes. Before that air cannon fired, he hadn't taken the Shering squad seriously at all, probably thinking Xiefeng and Qin Yueshue were enough. Now that the tables had turned, he stepped out to play the good guy. I chuckled softly, my eyes turning cold. Even. But that bald guy, the guy with the axe, and Adong, those three have to die. Xiefeng and Wang Laosen almost spat blood upon hearing this. For two level 2 mutants like them to be directly put on my kill list was nothing short of an insult. Adong's face turned pale. He could only look to Chun Ding to save his life. Chun Ding's face darkened. "Friend, you haven't suffered any losses, while I've lost a strong general and half my base. Now you want to kill 3 more people. Isn't that going too far?" "Too far," I sneered, pulling out my sniper rifle and aiming straight at the 3 trembling men. "You dare?" Chun Ding yelled, his expression changing, but I had already pulled the trigger. The bullet flew so fast that Adong couldn't even react. Before he could open his mouth to beg, the bullet shattered both his legs. A freezing sensation was followed by an agonizing pain that flooded his entire body. He screamed miserably, blood spraying like a fountain. I didn't kill him instantly, letting him drown in absolute agony. A slow death was worse than an execution. Seeing the barrel shift direction, Xiefeng and Wang Laosen immediately split up and ran. But a figure flashed beside Xiefeng. Zero's cold voice rang out. "Did you think our fight was over?" The blade flashed, tearing through the air, and plunged straight into his eye. Xiefeng screamed, blood gushing out and blinding his vision. He swung his arms wildly, only catching a glimpse of a girl with icy eyes. "Die!" Zero swung her blade. Xiefeng's throat burst with blood, his body convulsing before collapsing at her feet. At the same time, I had locked onto Wang Laosen. In my eyes, his speed slowed down, every step of his run clearly visible. Just as he lunged toward an overturned truck by the road, a bullet pierced through his back, blowing his internal organs to pieces. His body slammed hard into the truck, but he was dead before he even realized he had reached it. I lowered the gun, a fleeting sense of exhaustion washing over me. Using my brain's ability to hit such fast-moving targets consumed quite a bit of energy. I need to train more, I thought to myself. Everyone is improving. I can't fall behind. Chun Ding stood motionless, his face turning pale. He didn't dare move an inch, because if he did, the minibus would charge straight at him. Having 3 of his men killed right in front of him felt like being slapped in the face consecutively. At this moment, I calmly looked straight at him, my eyes cold. If he wanted to fight, I wouldn't mind killing 1 more. Chun Ding clenched his fists, then slowly relaxed them. Just now, the anger in his heart almost made him attack. But the thick, murderous intent radiating from the minibus poured over him like a bucket of cold water, forcing him to stay lucid. Whether it was the vehicle or the people inside, they clearly hadn't shown their full strength in the battle just now. If they really fought to the bitter end, he realized he didn't have the confidence to win. I spoke up. "I have a question to ask." Chun Ding maintained his defensive posture, his voice tense. "What do you want to ask?" "Where is Cheonghai City?" I asked. Chun Ding froze. "You want to go to Cheonghai?" So our goal from the very beginning was to find Cheonghai. He slowly explained that Cheonghai wasn't a pre-apocalyptic city. It was a base city built after the world collapsed. If you hadn't been there before, it was very hard to find the exact location. I continued asking, so you've been there? The weapons and ammo for the steel camp were all brought back by me from Cheonghai. As long as you have resources, you can buy anything there. Weapons, land, entertainment, even slaves. Speaking up to this point, he observed my reaction, seemingly thinking a young man with my kind of power would be interested. But I showed no emotion. In his heart, he secretly thought Cheonghai was a place that swallowed outsiders whole. No matter how strong you were, you'd just be one of countless arrogant fools. Plus, I had a bounty on my head, and that bounty was issued precisely from Cheonghai. He was even looking forward to the day we ran into trouble there. I continued, if you're familiar with the place, then I'll trouble you to lead the way. Chen Ding's face darkened. Lead the way? Don't you think you're pushing it? I gave a faint smile. I'm bullying you. So what? Anger flared up within him, while I remained completely unfazed. I could tell from his eyes that he wasn't being sincere. If he just gave verbal directions, I absolutely wouldn't believe him. Moreover, the fleeting look of gloating in his eyes made me even more vigilant. It was highly likely he'd pull some tricks behind my back the moment I turned around. Therefore, he only had two choices. Either lead the way. I didn't want to kill him just yet, as I still had a few things to ask. After meeting my gaze for a moment, he said slowly, I'll lead you to Cheonghai, and then we go our separate ways. If you guide us properly, I promise not to pursue this further. He pondered for a moment, then asked heavily, when do we leave? Now, I replied. He frowned, but wasn't given any time to prepare. He also clearly felt my monitoring gaze as a warning. Cursing inwardly, he quickly picked 7 or 8 trusted subordinates and 2 vehicles. I'm ready, he came over and said. I nodded slightly. Ready? Then follow us. It felt like a slap to the face for Chen Ding. His own statement of being ready was turned into an order by me. Under the gaze of his subordinates, he just wanted to ignore it. Everyone knew he was being forced, but he didn't have the guts to fight a life-or-death battle. He used to be reckless, but now, accustomed to luxury, he feared death. The fates of Chun Yueshue and the other 2 were clear examples. To him, this was just temporary endurance for long-term plans. He thought to himself, let's see you stay arrogant a bit longer, then stepped into his car, shouting without looking back, get in. Inside the vehicle, Jiang Zhuiying laughed gleefully. That guy named Chen must be furious right now. Li Yusin was worried. If he's genuinely leading the way, it's fine. But if he has ulterior motives, Rin Shiyu said coldly, I'll keep an eye on him. Right at that moment, a figure ran up next to Chen Ding's car. I raised an eyebrow. Xiashasha. The girl's face was pale, trembling pitifully. Today had been a series of shocks for her. From fearing we would die a gruesome death, to witnessing power beyond imagination, and then seeing Xie Feng killed with her own eyes. Xie Feng was her sworn brother, and also the person who made her both terrified and unable to break away. Even though Xie Feng gave her a place in the base, shielding her so she could retain some of her innocence. But Xie Shasha knew very well that in his eyes, she was just a replacement shadow for his dead biological sister. A man who could snap his own sister's neck with his bare hands would have no trouble killing her. Therefore, when she saw Xie Feng killed, she felt a pang of sorrow, but she didn't resent me or my teammates at all. What are you following us for? Chen Ding was already irritated, his voice cold as he spoke to Xie Shasha. Brother Chen, can I come with you? Xie Shasha pleaded earnestly. Come with us. Chen Ding sneered. No, you'll just be a burden. Xie Shasha stumbled, biting her lip tightly. She wasn't stupid. If she stayed at the steel camp, her only fate would be getting used and swallowed up by others. Moreover, deep down, she also wanted to leave with us. Right then, my voice rang out from inside the vehicle. Let her tag along. Xie Shasha turned to look at the minibus with joy, but then felt a bit disappointed when I only said one sentence and didn't show my face. Chen Ding glanced at the minibus, finally saying reluctantly, get in. Yes. Xie Shasha nodded repeatedly, hurriedly climbing into the second car and sitting in the passenger seat. With Chen Ding's word, no one in the convoy dared to touch her. Sitting in the car, her mind was a mess, but just being able to go with me made her feel satisfied. She told herself that she had been saved once again and shouldn't overthink it, but the future ahead was still a blur. She wasn't a mutant. She didn't have power like Zero, the person who could kill Xie Feng in the blink of an eye. Looking at the way she looks at you, even I feel soft-hearted. I thought you were going to let her on our bus. Jiang Zhuiying teased with a smile. I tapped her lightly on the head. Zero leaned against the handrail and spoke up. She's from the steel camp. Your brother wouldn't easily let a stranger on board. Sister Zero, being this rigid makes it hard to make friends, you know. Jiang Zhuiying sighed, shaking her head in exasperation. I cut in. All right, let's go. I thought to myself, maybe it's time to discipline this girl again. All she knows is how to cause mischief. According to Chen Ting, Shanghai was over 300 kilometers away from Wantou town. At our current speed, it would take a few days to get there. If it were just the MCV, one day would be enough. But I wasn't in a hurry. Having a few girls traveling with me meant it wouldn't be boring either. The interior of the MCV was becoming more and more luxurious, even featuring a home theater. Jiang Zhuiying sprawled on the sofa, hugging a Coke and some potato chips, happily watching her favorite movie on the big screen, completely forgetting everything else. Taozi and Wei Feifei were constantly amazed by the comfort inside the vehicle. The interior was no different from a mobile presidential suite. In the apocalypse, just surviving was hard enough, let alone enjoying life like this. Looking back at Chen Ting's 2 cars trailing behind, the contrast was even more glaring. We ate hot meals and took warm showers, while they only had dry biscuits and a few handfuls of dirty roadside water to wash their faces. After a day of traveling, Chen Ting and his subordinates were covered in dust, looking like they had just rolled through a sandstorm. When we stopped at a roadside diner, seeing us step out of the vehicle looking clean and refreshed, he couldn't hide his annoyance. He was used to enjoying himself, but compared to our vacation-like setup, he suddenly felt pathetic. Zero stepped down beside me, followed by Jiang Zhuiying, Li Yusin, Ran Xiu, and then Taozi and Wei Feifei. Even Ing left the driver's seat to get some fresh air. Chen Ting and his men were completely overshadowed. From the moment Zero appeared, they felt as if a luxury car full of stunning beauties had just pulled up. As each of them stepped down, their outstanding auras made it look exactly like a high society party from before the apocalypse. Except this scene was happening right in the middle of the wasteland. Chen Ting used to boast that Shanghai had gathered countless beauties, but compared to the women before him, those others weren't even worth mentioning. Not to mention their pure yet arrogant temperaments, which made it impossible for anyone to look away. I had heard Chen Ting mention that he was just a low-level manager in a large company before the apocalypse. He had met quite a few rich young ladies, but no matter what, none of them could compare to Ran Xiu. Li Yusin, born into a family of intellectuals, carried an elegant grace. Jiang Zhuiying was lively and adorable. Each had her own unique charm, none losing out to the others. No wonder he wasn't very interested when I told him about the fun things in Shanghai. It turned out his vehicle was already full of beautiful women. This is just too much luxury. Chen Ting's subordinates were all red-eyed with envy, and even he himself couldn't hide those feelings. They were working hard to lead the way, while I was relaxing comfortably, surrounded by beauties. Captain Jiang, are we resting here for the night? Chen Ting asked, trying to keep his composure. I looked at the row of diners and car washes in front of us. This used to be a rest stop for long-distance drivers before the apocalypse. This place is pretty clean, I said lightly. Not only are there no corpses, but the inside of the restaurant is quite tidy. Chen Ting calmly replied that as long as I was satisfied, it was fine. This was a place they often rested at when hunting or trading in Shanghai. There were only a few small villages around, almost no danger, and it was very quiet. Hearing this, I just nodded without showing any further emotion. Then let's rest here, I decided. Chen Ting said he would have someone prepare a place to sleep, even mentioning 2 high-end mattresses he had brought along. I waved my hand and told him there was no need. I already had a place to sleep in my vehicle. Chen Ting's face twitched uncontrollably. He was probably cursing in his head. It really was a mobile home. It felt like I had just slapped him in the face. Right at that moment, Xizaxa ran over to me. She hadn't seen me all day, only able to look at the minibus from afar. Being in Chen Ting's car with no one to talk to made her feel suffocated. Seeing me get out of the car, she immediately brightened up, asking if we were resting, if we needed water boiled, and offering to help. I told her there was no need, and her eyes instantly showed disappointment. I caught sight of Jiang Zhuing standing to the side, shaking her head and sighing, seemingly unable to hold back. I looked at Zai Zaxa for a moment. She was gripping the hem of her shirt tightly, looking down at her toes, holding only a small piece of dried meat in her hand. Since she wasn't a mutant, her ration of dried meat was very small. She clearly couldn't bear to eat it all at once, only taking tiny bites. Seeing her standing still in front of me, I didn't know what to say. Just then, I saw Chen Ting sitting down on a chair his subordinate had brought out, and an idea popped into my head. Chen Ting, go hunt a mutant beast and roast some meat, I said. He had just sat down and was stunned by these words. His anger flared up, but thinking about how we were already halfway there, he told himself to endure it. He forced a twisted smile and said it was a good idea. Eating dry rations all day was getting boring, and a change of taste would be nice. After saying that, his face darkened, and he glared at his subordinates, shouting at them to hurry up and go. Not long after, a mutant beast was hunted and brought back. Chen Ting ordered his men to start a fire and roast the meat. The savory aroma quickly spread. Out of habit, a subordinate brought the best cut of meat to him, but Chen Ting irritably waved his hand and told him to bring it to me. He figured I already had a hold on him, so showing a little weakness to lower my guard would be better. The plate of meat was quickly presented to me, and the man who brought it respectfully relayed the message. Zai Zaxa stood to the side, chewing on her small piece of dried meat, her eyes wide as she stared at the fragrant roasted mutant beast meat. But when she saw me looking, she quickly turned her face away. You eat it, I said. Zai Zaxa froze, and the subordinate was also confused, but he still placed the plate of meat in front of her. She was flustered, knowing that the first cut of meat was always the best and was meant to be offered to the boss. Chen Ting was someone who could easily kill her, yet here she was, enjoying better treatment than him. If it were before, she absolutely wouldn't have dared. But seeing me standing right in front of her, she somehow found the courage, reached out to take the plate, and thanked me. She placed the plate on her lap, inhaling the aroma, looking at the golden, juicy pieces of roasted meat, unable to stop her mouth from watering. She carefully picked up a piece and put it in her mouth. The flavor instantly made her eyes curve into crescent moons. Her face was full of satisfaction as she exclaimed, "So good." Seeing her reaction, I couldn't help but laugh. This girl really was a little glutton. At first, I only took care of her because she was obedient, but I didn't expect to discover such an adorable side to her. On the other hand, Chen Ting was so furious he almost coughed up blood watching this scene. If that meat had been for me, he could have accepted it. But he never expected me to casually give it to some ordinary girl from his base. It was basically saying he wasn't even worth as much as Xie Shasha. He suddenly called over a trusted subordinate, whispered a few words in his ear. The man nodded, glanced at the minibus, pretended to go take a piss, and quietly slipped around the back of the diner. Chen Ting knew he was being watched, but mealtime was when people were most off guard. Plus, with only one subordinate leaving, he figured my team and I wouldn't notice. He looked toward me, a cold glint flashing in his eyes, thinking to himself, Jiang Lushi, keep acting arrogant. I want to see how long you can keep smiling. Shanghai City. When the apocalypse first broke out, major cities organized evacuations. But not every military unit could successfully escort survivors to the pre-planned safe zones. Shanghai was a base city formed under exactly those circumstances. A military unit that couldn't rendezvous with the main forces was forced to build their own base along with the remaining survivors. Right now, inside a bar in Shanghai City, the atmosphere obviously couldn't compare to the pre-apocalyptic era. The only topics of conversation in the bar revolved around two things: booze and women. Waitresses in revealing outfits carried beers back and forth between tables, occasionally getting groped by drunks, then giggling as if they were used to it. In the VIP booth, a few young men and women were sitting and chatting. A young man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, dressed sharply, held a glass of wine and spoke with full confidence. Don't look at how Shanghai has gathered resources from over a dozen surrounding cities, practically occupying an entire province. Alcohol is still a luxury here. The main reason is that transportation is too difficult. If you run into a mutant beast or a horde of zombies on the road, an entire truckload of booze could be completely destroyed. A heavily made-up, gorgeously dressed girl immediately laughed and said, "It's all thanks to young Master Qin that we get to enjoy wine and champagne like this. The alcohol supply in Shanghai is all provided by his family. Getting to drink at your bar is already a huge honor." This girl's name was Li Tiantian, and the way she looked at Qin Huangfang was practically burning with desire. In her eyes, Qin Huangfang was the golden bachelor. He owned a bar in Shanghai, monopolized the alcohol supply, and had a powerful family background supporting him. Qin Huangfang just smiled faintly, barely paying any attention to Li Tiantian. His gaze was fixed on the girl sitting across from him. He politely asked Xiang Shuahai if she was satisfied with his hospitality. He said that since she had come from afar, he naturally had to use good wine to welcome her. When he looked at Xiang Shuahai, he couldn't hide the amazement in his eyes. Xiang Shuahai used to be a top-tier celebrity before the apocalypse, and later awakened as a mutant. Her aura was outstanding, her beauty unparalleled. She wore no makeup, yet her facial features were striking. With her sparkling eyes and fair skin, just sitting quietly in the bar was enough to attract countless stares. If Qin Huangfang hadn't been there, some guys probably wouldn't have been able to hold back from coming over to hit on her. But even Qin Huangfang didn't dare have any dirty thoughts about her, because he knew very well. From the moment Xiang Shuahai set foot in Shanghai, a terrifying figure had already set his sights on her. Hearing this, Xiang Shuahai forced a smile, said the wine was very good, and thanked Qin Huangfang. He laughed out loud, telling her not to be so polite, just noting that she hadn't drunk much. A trace of worry flashed across Xiang Shuahai's flawless face. She asked when he would be able to arrange for her to meet someone from the military, as she feared her comrades back at her base couldn't hold out much longer. Qin Huangfang reassured her that it wouldn't be long, telling her not to worry, as boss Song Lingchun was keeping an eye on the matter. In Shanghai, Luo Jufeng was the absolute authority in the military, and Song Lingchun was one of his most capable subordinates. In this city, if Song Lingchun stomped his foot, the ground would shake 3 times. He was also Qin Huangfang's backer, and the one who had his eyes on Xiang Shuahai. Xiang Shuahai sighed inwardly. She originally thought Shanghai was an orthodox military base, which was why she came here for help. But after more than half a month, she gradually realized this place was completely different from what she had imagined. Although Shanghai originated from the military, it had now become an independent faction, with practically no connection to the official military zones. After I led the Shi-Ing squad away, Xiang Shuahai continued to build her base in Subei. But recently, a strange disease had broken out in the base, infecting many people. In desperation, she had no choice but to seek out military bases and safe zones, hoping to get some help. Qin Huangfang suddenly asked out of curiosity who exactly it was that helped Subei wipe out the water monster and save everyone. He remembered Xiang Shuahai mentioning that there was a girl with medical abilities in that squad. Xiang Shuahai nodded, saying sadly that after they parted ways, she lost contact with them. She had tried searching, but there was absolutely no news in the surrounding areas. Qin Huangfang said regretfully that he had asked Song Lingchun. Even medical mutants were helpless against the disease spreading in Subei. It was just a pity they couldn't contact that squad. If they could invite them to Shanghai, they could completely join the military and put their abilities to use under Lingchun's command. Right at that moment, the atmosphere in the bar suddenly quieted down, and the waitresses hurriedly stood up straight. A few men in camouflage military uniforms walked in. Seeing them, Qin Huangfang jumped up as if his feet were on fire, smiling brightly as he stepped forward to greet the man leading the group. He respectfully called out, "Boss Song." Song Lingchun's features were sharp and cold, his gaze like a knife. He completely ignored the others in the bar, striding straight towards Xiang Shuahai and asking how she had been these past few days. Xiang Shuahai nodded coldly, addressing him as Colonel Song. Song Lingchun frowned and told her to just call him by his name. Xiang Shuahai calmly replied that she was fine, but she didn't know when there would be news about the matter she had asked him for. She could wait, but tens of thousands of lives couldn't. Her attitude toward Song Lingchun was always measured, neither arrogant nor flattering, deliberately keeping a safe distance. Smart as she was, Xiang Shuahai had long realized Song Lingchun's intentions toward her, but she already had her answer in her heart a long time ago. She knew her first kiss had already been given to me, and she wouldn't accept anyone else. In this era, a first kiss might not be that important anymore, but for Xiang Shuahai, it was the first time her heart had truly fluttered. In this cruel and cold world, she wanted to carefully preserve that feeling, hiding it deep in her heart. She treated it as a rare bit of warmth to comfort herself, because she understood that she would almost certainly never have the chance to see me again. Song Lingchen said that once he finished handling his business, he would be leaving for a while, maybe 1 to 3 days. Hearing this, Qin Huangfang was surprised and asked if Boss Song was personally taking action. Had something happened? Song Lingchen replied very calmly, saying it was nothing major, just news regarding a previous bounty. Hearing about the bounty, Qin Huangfang asked in astonishment, "Is it that squad? They're still not dead?" Song Lingchen said coldly that in the apocalypse, if you hide well, you're hard to find. But this time was different. Li Tiantian chimed in with a charming smile, saying that with Boss Song personally taking action, that squad was definitely dead meat. Getting a bounty placed on them by Qionghai City is just bad luck, she said, pretending to recall the name. The Shiring Squad. At first, Xiang Shuahai wasn't paying attention, but the moment she heard the word Shiring Squad, it felt like a needle pierced straight through her heart. She hurriedly asked what they just said and what the captain of that squad was named. Song Lingchen replied nonchalantly that his surname seemed to be Jiang. Since the name was on the bounty anyway, he couldn't be bothered to remember the name of a dead man. His tone already treated me as a corpse. Xiang Shuahai immediately asked anxiously why they were putting a bounty on me and where he was going. Song Lingchen answered decisively, saying it was obviously to kill me, and told her just to wait. He would bring our heads back. After Song Lingchen led his men out of the bar, Xiang Shuahai stood frozen in place, her entire body stiff. Li Tiantian noticed her unusual expression and smiled suspiciously, asking if she wasn't feeling well. But Xiang Shuahai's face was pale, completely in no mood to reply. Only the words she had just heard echoed in her mind. I had been put on a bounty list, and they were about to go hunt me and the Shiring Squad down. She never expected to hear news about me again in this lifetime, let alone in such a sudden and painful way. Qin Huangfang smiled and asked if she was worried about Boss Song, saying there was no need to worry. The news would quickly spread everywhere once it left the bar. Who knew how many squads would immediately set out? He joked that this was like discovering a fat mutant beast. Everyone saw it as prey. This was truly a hunting party. Hearing those words, Xiang Shuahai only felt her heart turn ice cold. She looked around the bar and, sure enough, quite a few people were already hurrying out in the direction Song Lingchen had gone. Just his army and his own strength were terrifying enough, not to mention the many other squads joining in. This was a hunt aimed directly at me and the Shiring Squad. While Qin Huangfang was still calling her name, Xiang Shuahai dashed out of the bar like a gust of wind. Knowing I was in extreme danger, how could she sit still and wait? Xiang Shuahai's squad had come all the way from Subei. After the sacrifices made along the way, there were now less than 20 people left. She originally planned to run straight back to their quarters, but as soon as she stepped through the door, she hesitated. This time was undoubtedly extremely dangerous. She was willing to risk her life for me, but her squad members didn't necessarily have to take that risk with her. But as soon as she went inside, a close friend noticed her pale face and asked what happened. Was she being bullied? Xiang Shuahai shook her head, hesitated for a moment, and then recounted the whole situation. She was too anxious right now, her heart pounding so hard she felt like she was suffocating. If she didn't speak up, she feared she wouldn't be able to handle it before even finding me. After finishing her story, she looked at her squad members and said she absolutely had to go help me, but they didn't need to risk their lives with her. However, everyone's reaction completely exceeded her expectations. Someone realized it was Captain Jiang Lushi. Another said that if it weren't for me, they would have been killed by the water monster long ago. How could they have lived to see today? Someone else decisively said that of course they had to go. Even if they couldn't help much, contributing a little strength was better than just standing by and watching. Hearing those words, Xiang Shuahai was so moved she choked up. Only then did she realize that I wasn't just a hero in her heart, but the hero of everyone from Subei. Her heart was filled with happiness and joy, because that was the man she loved. She didn't hesitate any longer and immediately said they shouldn't delay. Everyone was moving out right now. Song Lingchen and the other squads had definitely already set out. If she missed them, she wouldn't know my whereabouts, let alone what to do next. At the north gate of Cheonghai City, a convoy had quickly assembled. Dozens of vehicles gathered at the north gate, including tanks, military off-road vehicles, and armored cars. Soldiers carried machine guns, sniper rifles, and even rocket launchers on their shoulders. The cold armored hulls and the pitch-black barrels of the tanks exuded an overwhelming presence that made people tremble just looking at them. Many passing survivor groups secretly wondered what exactly they were preparing to do with such a massive scale. Because even for major hunts, the Cheonghai City military rarely deployed this much weaponry and equipment. The one leading them was still Song Lingchen. It was said he had been a level 2 mutant for a long time, and was one of the strongest among them. What happened? Many people whispered among themselves. Then someone who had gotten the news from the bar spoke up. You know about that bounty? They found the target. It's the Shering squad. I know them, the ones driving that minibus. But is there really a need to make such a big deal out of it? They're dead meat. Many people shook their heads and sighed, but their faces were full of schadenfreude. In their eyes, this outcome was beyond doubt. With firepower like this, even a zombie horde led by a few level 2 mutant zombies could be wiped out, let alone a small survivor squad. Song Lingchen completely ignored the gazes of the onlookers. He sat in an armored vehicle, his cold voice echoing throughout the ranks, instantly drowning out all surrounding noise. Prepare to move out. With a loud rumble, the entire convoy started up simultaneously, the deafening sound making it feel as if the ground itself was shaking. Right at that moment, a few vehicles sped out of Cheonghai City. Colonel Song, wait a moment. The voice carried over on the wind. Xiang Shuahai, sitting in an off-road vehicle, called out loudly before even arriving. Seeing her, a flash of joy appeared in Song Lingchen's eyes. He asked what she was doing here. Xiang Shuahai had always been cold toward him before, but he didn't mind. Because it was only natural for such a perfect woman to be proud. As long as that pride was eventually conquered by him, that was enough. Seeing her rushing over like this, he couldn't help but feel happy, even wondering if she had finally been moved by him. Or was she just here to see him off? But if that were the case, there was no need to bring all her people. Xiang Shuahai took a deep breath, calmed her emotions, and said she wanted to join this operation. She asked if she could tag along, and if not, she would go on her own. Song Lingchen was momentarily stunned, then fell silent for a moment. If this were a regular military operation, he couldn't just make that decision on a whim. But ultimately, he nodded and said if she wanted to go, she could come along. It was rare for Xiang Shuahai to take the initiative to propose a joint operation, and it was a good opportunity to spend time together. After a brief thought, he agreed. A hint of joy flashed in Xiang Shuahai's eyes, because among all the people hunting me, Song Lingchen's squad was the biggest threat. Only by going with him could she better help me. But that flash of joy meant something entirely different in Song Lingchen's eyes. A smile crept onto his cold face. His gaze toward Xiang Shuahai grew more passionate, as he always believed that a woman was only truly beautiful when she smiled. And Xiang Shuahai's faint smile was enough to outshine the flowers. Very quickly, the convoy set out, and Xiang Shuahai's squad merged into the formation. After this army left, 7 or 8 other survivor squads successively departed as well. They were all the strongest squads in Cheonghai, everyone feeling they could grab a piece of the pie in this hunt. At the same time, at a roadside diner, dinner had ended, and Xia Shasha sat there looking incredibly satisfied. Suddenly, she noticed a tiny creature not far away, its belly round and bulging, looking just as happy. She jumped and screamed, because after the apocalypse, her first reflex upon seeing a strange creature was pure fear. I walked over, picked it up with one hand, and told her not to be afraid. This was Luo. Luo, full of food and drink, didn't care at all about being picked up by its ears. Its little legs dangled, its tail wagged, and its eyes were half closed in a lazy daze. Xiaxia cautiously asked if it ate people. I thought for a moment and said, probably not. Though I knew in my heart that, as a mutant beast, it was theoretically entirely possible. But Xiaxia ignored the word probably. Her eyes lit up. Wow, it's so cute. Then she suddenly looked at me timidly and whispered that earlier, when she dozed off in the car, she accidentally woke up and heard Ting and the others saying they wouldn't let me off. It was just that they were very careful, probably noticing she was awake, so they stopped. In short, she told me to be more careful. I smiled and told her not to worry. Right at that moment, Ren Shiyu's voice echoed in my mind. She said Ting's subordinate must have done something. Even though Ting's willpower was strong, she could still sense his killing intent. She asked me what we should do now. I sneered inwardly, saying that the distance from here to Qionghai City wasn't far anymore. He had probably already called for reinforcements, because from the very beginning, I had never truly trusted Ting. This played right into my hands. If I charged straight into Qionghai City, I might have to be somewhat cautious. But now it was different. I was the one standing still, waiting for the prey to come to me. I told Shiyu, full alert. We just wait for our guests to arrive. The next day, Ting still wore a smile on his face, holding back his temper as he led me and the others toward Qionghai City. When passing through a small town, he suddenly swerved, turning into the parking lot of a roadside diner and stopping. This diner was surrounded by walls on all four sides, leaving only one entrance. Inside was the parking lot. There was a small pavilion, an artificial rockery, and a low building. The layout was simple, with almost no obstacles. Captain Jiang, shall we rest here for a bit? Ting asked. I glanced at him, nodded, and said, sure. My gaze made Ting flinch slightly, a hint of unease rising in his heart. Had I noticed something? But whether I had noticed or not, in his eyes, it was already too late. A cold glint flashed in Ting's eyes, and the corners of his mouth quickly curled into a smug smile. Right at that moment, Ting signaled the driver. With a vroom, the two steel camp vehicles suddenly shot forward, accelerating straight toward the diner's gate. It all happened so fast that even Xie Shasha, sitting in the car, didn't have time to react. By the time she realized what was happening, her face was deathly pale, and she called out my name in panic. On the minibus, I calmly watched the scene unfold before me. Is this the place you chose? I asked. By now, the two cars had reached the gate, and Ting's loud, triumphant laughter rang out. He yelled that he had chosen this place as my grave, asking if I was satisfied and telling me to enjoy it. Xie Shasha looked back at the diner anxiously, panic in her heart. The minibus was still parked there, motionless. At that exact moment, the roar of engines echoed from all directions. Xie Shasha felt as if hundreds of cars were rushing over all at once. Off-road vehicles appeared one after another, completely surrounding the diner like a swarming zombie horde. At the other end of the street, tanks and armored vehicles also emerged. This army had completely locked down the area. Song Lingchen sat in an armored vehicle, looking toward the diner in the distance. From his position, he couldn't see the battlefield clearly, but he could sense hundreds of mutant energy sources converging. In his eyes, today the Shi-Ing squad would tremble before true power. He calmly thought that even if he didn't lift a finger, I would be torn to pieces by the rats and hyenas below. This was true authority. This was Commander Luo's power, something I couldn't even begin to imagine. As a commander, there was no need to charge in and brawl with a bunch of mutants. He just had to sit back and wait, and those hyenas would bring the prey and the spoils right to him. In another car, Xiang Shuahai's eyes seemed to pierce through the long streets and buildings, staring straight at the minibus trapped inside the diner. Her heart tightened, and she called out my name. Just as she was about to drive off, Song Lingchen blocked her way. A few tanks and combat vehicles quickly surrounded her. Xiang Shuahai frowned and asked what he meant by this, while Song Lingchen looked her straight in the face. He asked what was so interesting about watching a bunch of pathetic bugs get trampled to death. Did she really care that much? Seeing her remain silent, he looked away and coldly told her that in this situation, she didn't need to go over. Just staying here and waiting for the results with him was enough. Xiang Shuahai looked into the distance, her hands clenched tightly. Her eyes held both worry and prayer. At the same time, when she glanced at Song Lingchen, a flash of murderous intent appeared in her eyes. In Ting's car, Xie Shasha looked at the vehicles surrounding them like a pack of mutant beasts, her face pale. Ting sneered, turned to look at her, and said it was too late. She could just sit there and watch me die without an intact corpse. Shasha's body trembled, fear evident in her eyes. But gradually, her gaze became resolute. She said that I wouldn't die. She was still scared, but when she looked at Chen Ting, there was no longer any fear in her eyes. Chen Ting looked at her, an amused smile on his face, and told her to just wait and see. With this many people, he really wanted to know what way out I could possibly have. The mutant squads that had gathered also looked at the lone minibus with the eyes of predators staring at prey trapped in a cage. Someone laughed loudly, telling the Shur-ing squad to surrender quickly. If they surrendered, they might get a quicker death. Against a single squad, they might have been wary, but with so many squads appearing together, the feeling was completely different. The only thing they worried about was that there were too many wolves and not enough meat to go around. Through the windshield, they could also see me sitting quietly in the minibus. In such a situation, I still hadn't moved an inch. Someone mocked that I was probably so scared my legs had gone soft. Another said that if they were in my shoes, they'd be terrified too, and would have probably killed themselves by now. They didn't lower their voices at all when saying these things. Even sitting in the minibus, my team and I could hear every word clearly. The mutant squads treated hunting the Shur-ing squad entirely as a game. Right at that moment, a very faint expression appeared on my face, and then I laughed. That smile stunned quite a few people. Even Chen Ting had to frown. Someone muttered sarcastically that I had gone mad. Another thought I was so scared I had lost my mind. Only Chen Ting felt uneasy. In this situation, did I really think I still had a way out? The people from the steel camp were the only ones who truly knew how strong the Shur-ing squad was. But even if the minibus hadn't revealed its full power yet, with so many mutant squads here, just one bite from each squad would be enough to crush me. Chen Ting had already decided to sit back and watch the tigers fight. No matter what tricks I had, the mutant squads would be the ones taking the hits first. He just needed to stand by and wait for the right moment to deliver the fatal blow, washing away his previous humiliation. Surrounded by a formation like this, I couldn't hold back a smile. The power of the organization behind this really wasn't small. I wondered how much of a bounty they had posted to attract so many hungry wolves. This pack of wolves had already been lying in ambush in the town. All Chen Ting did was lure me into the trap. But with so many people hiding, how could Xiu not notice? I already knew exactly how many enemies there were. Everything was prepared. It seemed that organization still didn't take me seriously enough. Otherwise, they would have understood that this mob in front of me was nothing but a bunch of clay chickens and pottery dogs. Drive, I warred. Facing so many mutant squads, I didn't defend. Instead, I chose to take the initiative and attack. The minibus suddenly shot forward. Even though Chen Ting was mentally prepared, he was still shocked, and the mutant squads were momentarily stunned. But very quickly, they assumed this was just a desperate struggle before death, completely dismissing the minibus's charge as a threat. Dozens of guns were instantly aimed at me. At the same time, over a dozen off-road vehicles on the front line started up, charging forward like a pack of wolves. Someone yelled that it was the Banlai squad. This was the squad that had arrived first, and also the first to boldly launch an attack. Their strength was among the top tier of the mutant squads here. Their name came from the hyena, famous for its ruthless hunting style of eating prey while it was still alive. And the spotted hyena was the largest and most ferocious breed. This name was a symbol of their brutality. The dozen or so vehicles were all fitted with spiked steel grills on the front. They had hunted down countless other squads, intercepting and slaughtering them. Facing the oncoming minibus, the Banlai squad appeared incredibly calm. Right before the collision, their vehicles suddenly split apart, flanking from multiple directions. Over a dozen whistling sounds tore through the air as iron chains shot out from those vehicles, each tipped with a sharp spike. Someone knowledgeable muttered that this was the Banlai squad's signature hunting method. Whether it was a survivor's vehicle or a mutant beast, once hit by this move, there was no escape. When the spikes pierced the vehicle's body, the chains from multiple directions would lock the target down, immobilizing the vehicle. And once it lost its mobility, it was just waiting to die against this pack of hyenas. The captain of the Banlai squad smiled confidently. She was a middle-aged woman dressed provocatively, but no one dared underestimate her, because her ruthlessness in killing was too well known. She licked her lips, smiling seductively, saying she didn't expect the captain of the Shur-ing squad to be so good-looking. She liked young guys like that. It was just a pity I had a bounty on my head. Otherwise, she would have wanted to capture me and play around a bit. Since I wasn't a mutant anyway, I probably wouldn't last long and would soon become a skeleton. Those words made the surrounding mutants shudder, because countless men had already died at her hands. This woman could be caressing you one second and snapping your neck the next. She even giggled, saying the bounty didn't specify dead or alive, so how I died didn't matter. Right at that moment, the spikes, carrying terrifying piercing force, slammed straight into the minibus. Clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing rang out continuously. But the next scene made the Banlai squad captain's smile instantly freeze. Her eyes widened in shock. All the spikes had bounced off. They only left a few shallow dents on the surface of the minibus, completely failing to pierce through. How was this possible? Those spikes were custom-made from a special alloy crafted by the Cheonghai City military, unbelievably hard. Was this minibus even harder than that special alloy? The laughter and chatter of the mutant squads instantly ceased. Everyone was stunned by this scene, unable to believe their eyes. The defense of that minibus was truly terrifying. But while everyone was still shocked by the minibus's defense, I frowned slightly. Starseed's cold warning voice echoed in my mind, notifying me that the MCV's armor had been damaged. The damage level was 5%. Anger instantly surged in my chest. The MCV had been upgraded, yet it still took damage. This made me realize I had underestimated these survivors. I didn't expect them to have such tricks. If this were still the old minibus, it probably would have been heavily damaged just now. I spoke coldly, "You can't catch me. Now it's my turn to catch you." The Banlai squad's iron chains had lost their effect, but their captain quickly regained her composure, ordering them to close in and latch onto my vehicle. Immediately, from multiple directions, the Banlai squad's off-road vehicles fired out a barrage of spiked iron nets, while simultaneously preparing to throw tire spikes under my wheels. But right at that moment, the MCV suddenly accelerated. I didn't dodge. Instead, I rammed straight into one of the Banlai squad's vehicles. The engine roared fiercely like an enraged beast, making people feel as if their eardrums were about to tear. The Banlai squad captain's face changed, and she hurriedly shouted a warning. That off-road vehicle frantically swerved, cranking the steering wheel hard, but it was too late. With a deafening bang, the off-road vehicle was sent flying into the air, flipping several times before crashing heavily to the ground. The chassis was completely mangled, turned into a pile of scrap metal. Immediately after came a massive explosion. Flames erupted fiercely, and black smoke billowed. Everything ended cleanly in the blink of an eye. But for me, this was just the beginning. The MCV continued to change direction. The Banlai squad captain screamed in exasperation, ordering them to kill me and keep closing in. Over a dozen off-road vehicles immediately tailed me, but the MCV's power far exceeded their imagination, and its turning ability was terrifyingly agile. Under Ying's control, despite its massive size, it was unbelievably nimble. The spectating mutant squads felt as if they were watching a high-speed chase taking place in a confined space. It was so tense it was suffocating. Some people felt dizzy and nauseous just watching. Crash, smash, bang. The MCV collided continuously. Every time I suddenly changed direction, a few off-road vehicles were sent flying away. They already had a hard time piercing the vehicle's defense, and even if they tried to latch on, the MCV's turning speed was just too fast. One vehicle completely lost control and was hurled straight into the small building of the diner, creating a massive crash. I didn't even need to activate any special features. Just relying on brute force and Ying's masterful driving skills was enough to make countless people hold their breath. This scene was like a pack of hyenas desperately attacking a giant beast. But that giant beast was much stronger than they imagined. Not only did it make it impossible for them to bite, but it also counterattacked with stomps and slaps as heavy as thunder, crushing them one by one. The MCV continuously smashed into the Banlai squad's vehicles. In just a short moment, the squad had lost more than half its numbers. At this point, the Banlai squad captain finally realized the prey in front of her was much tougher than expected. The thought of retreating sprouted in her mind. She came here to hunt, absolutely not to risk her life. So she immediately signaled the whole squad to temporarily pull back. I sneered, since you're already here, don't even think about leaving. Ing immediately hit the acceleration button. The MCV roared like rolling thunder, charging straight ahead. Even if the pack of hyenas scattered in all directions, they couldn't possibly outrun this vehicle. One by one, the panicked off-road vehicles were chased down and rammed into. The higher the speed, the more terrifying the impact. One vehicle was sent flying, crashing into two others in front of it, turning into a chaotic mess in the blink of an eye. The Banlai squad captain looked back, her face deathly pale, only hearing the violent crashes behind her. And when she got a clear look, she realized her entire squad had been wiped out. Only her vehicle was left. The terror made her scalp go numb. Right now, she no longer thought about killing or eating me alive. There was only one thought left in her mind. She had to escape back to the crowd. I asked coldly, I said I was going to kill you, and you still think you can run? The MCV let out another terrifying roar, charging straight forward. The Banlai squad captain screamed, frantically begging to surrender. This minibus had far surpassed all her expectations. Just 1 second of hesitation from me would be enough for her to escape. But my eyes remained ruthlessly cold. I said, sorry, but you make me sick. Amidst the ear-piercing screech of the engine, the MCV caught up to the last off-road vehicle. With a violent bang, the Banlai squad captain's scream was abruptly cut off. The vehicle was launched high into the air, crashed heavily to the ground, and then, with an earth-shattering explosion, turned into a giant fireball. The Banlai squad was completely annihilated. The scene was terrifyingly quiet. All that remained was the echoing sound of off-road vehicles being tossed and smashed, along with the sizzling of burning wreckage. The survivors who had come to hunt the Shi-Ing squad were still frozen in shock, speechless. Someone swallowed hard, their atoms apple-bobbing continuously. Some also began to waver, especially those whose strength couldn't compare to the Banlai squad. The thought of giving up had already sparked in their minds. But even so, not a single person in the crowd surrounding the minibus dared to step forward. The lesson of the Banlai squad was too clear. Whoever struck first would be the first to die. Chun Ting's eyes darkened, his face looking as ugly as it could get. He watched the crowd hesitate to advance, and fury blazed in his heart. He had been looking forward to seeing the Shi-Ing squad surrounded and torn to pieces, but he never expected that minibus to be so terrifying. It had crushed the Banlai squad in the blink of an eye, shocking all of them to their core. Everyone, you all went through the trouble of coming here. Do you really want to give up now? Let's attack together. No matter how strong his vehicle is, it has a limit. Do you really think it's invulnerable to weapons, fire, and water? He yelled, continuing to incite them. Kill him. There are several peerless beauties in that car, plus all the loot and that massive bounty. What are you still hesitating for? Chun Ting's voice quickly spread across the area around the diner. Those words made quite a few people start to waver again. That's right. If they all charged together, no matter how strong the Shi-Ing squad was, they wouldn't be able to hold out. Although the Banlai squad was wiped out, their attack wasn't completely useless. It proved that the minibus's armor wasn't impenetrable. Realizing this, the eyes of many looking at the vehicle began to flash with greed. What attracted them wasn't just the beauties Chun Ting mentioned, but the minibus itself. Even if the vehicle ultimately had to be handed over to the Cheonghai City military, just looting the inside or digging out some special secret would be more than enough. At this moment, my cold gaze swept over the crowd outside. In my eyes, they were no different from a pack of hyenas. As soon as they smelled blood, they would rush in, wanting to eat the Shi-Ing squad alive, wanting to drain our blood dry. Virum. The minibus suddenly started up, the engine roaring fiercely. What is he doing? Is he crazy? Does he want to take on all of us at once? The survivors were both angry and panicked, because before they could even make a move, I had taken the initiative to attack first. In their eyes, that action was basically looking down on over 100 people and nearly 10 combined squads, treating them all as if they were just a second Banlai squad. So arrogant. Does he think killing the Banlai squad means he can kill all of us? The Banlai squad was strong, but they're still far inferior to the combined strength of all of us. Fine, let him come. We'll teach him a lesson. Shouts rang out one after another. The crowd quickly prepared for battle. Hundreds of guns fired simultaneously at the oncoming minibus, creating a dense rain of bullets. Under the hail of gunfire, sparks flew continuously off the vehicle's surface. Bullets hitting the windshield produced ear-piercing sounds. The vehicle hadn't been pierced yet, but they all knew it was only a matter of time. And ammunition wasn't the only thing they had prepared for me. A row of off-road vehicles lined up in front, their bumpers fitted with sharp iron spikes, looking like a giant wall of death. Behind them, other vehicles had also formed a defensive line. The faster the minibus crashed into them, the greater the impact, and the more gruesome its death would be. Behind those shields, the mutants were ready. The moment the minibus crashed, they would immediately charge forward, tear open the vehicle, and flood inside. Among them were quite a few with terrifyingly immense strength, capable of hunting mutant beasts barehanded and snapping their necks. Once they breached the cramped cabin, with their overwhelming numbers, that space would turn into a deadly trap for the Shearing Squad. Everyone get ready. We've already seen the limits of this vehicle's defense. There's nothing to be afraid of. If they like hiding in that car so much, then let this car become their grave. The mutants' roars echoed, full of murderous intent. Inside the car, I watched the crowd outside through the windshield. Right at that moment, the passenger seat beneath me suddenly slid back. A hidden track system under the seat carried me deep into a flat metal wall, opening up into a secret space. This was the main control room. As soon as I entered, the surroundings instantly lit up. The monitors displaying a 360-degree panoramic view of the outside all activated simultaneously. Every blind spot, every vehicle, every face was displayed clearly. The minibus was still charging straight toward the crowd of survivors at breakneck speed. They carried arrogant confidence, along with eyes full of murderous intent and greed. They looked at the vehicle as if they were looking at a naked, peerless beauty willingly throwing herself into their arms. Seeing those malicious gazes, my face gradually grew cold. In the apocalyptic era, these people had become selfish to the core, willing to treat their own kind as prey to achieve their goals. The way they looked at me and my teammates was completely unlike how one looks at living human beings. The mastermind behind all this, the organization that issued the bounty, was naturally the main culprit. But these people who came to hunt me today, all deserve to die too. Their gazes disgusted me to the bone. Starseed, I called out softly. The moment that thought formed, the control panel appeared on the screen. Remove camouflage. Switch to true form. Host command received. Removing MCV's camouflage. The survivors stared intently at the oncoming minibus, but when the distance was down to mere inches, everything suddenly halted, as if the vehicle had hit an invisible barrier. Like a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon, the vehicle's body began to transform from the front. The camouflage layers peeled away, gradually revealing a bizarre, silver metallic machine. Everyone, including Chen Ting, was stunned. What is this? Xieshasha's eyes widened, unable to believe the scene before her. No one had ever seen a vehicle like this before. Massive, cold, its silver metallic gleam reflecting an oppressive aura that made people shudder just looking at it. They instinctively looked up. The sunlight seemed to be completely blocked by the vehicle's body, its giant dark shadow looming over everything. Click, clack, clack. Dry mechanical sounds rang out. The roof rotated, revealing a series of firing ports as pitch-black gun barrels extended outward. At the front of the vehicle, a giant silver ramming horn materialized. Sharp and blinding. Compared to the spikes on the off-road vehicles, it was like comparing the fangs of a ferocious beast to the teeth of a rat. The disparity was too massive. This isn't a car, it's a mobile fortress, Chen Ting said in a low voice, his face darkening. A minibus transforming into a mobile fortress. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he definitely would have thought it was absurd. Even though this era was full of mutant abilities, the scene before him was so sci-fi that it made people doubt their own eyes. Can we even stop this thing? Just as that thought flashed through the survivors' minds. Boom. The MCV, in its true form, charged forward at terrifying speed, slamming straight into the front line of vehicles. Crunch. The first off-road vehicle was pierced straight through by the silver horn. Like an ancient beast, the MCV tore through the formation in the blink of an eye, carving a path right through the barricade. Along its path, vehicles were tossed aside like toys, crashing, skidding, and then being completely crushed. Those who had planned to rush the minibus but reacted too slowly were turned into pools of blood in the very first collision. Those who reacted quickly scattered and fled, screaming in terror as they ran. Chen Ting was dumbfounded. He never expected today's outcome to be exactly like the scene he witnessed when the Shi-Ing squad charged into his base and destroyed everything. At this moment, the mutants were no different from ordinary people. Their reflexes weren't superior at all. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupted. In the blast, quite a few mutants were blown away, screaming miserably. Someone had thrown a grenade at the MCV. Seeing this, a few people felt a brief wave of relief. No matter how strong the MCV was, could it really withstand a grenade? But the very next second, everyone was stunned to see the vehicle only shake slightly, its speed not dropping at all. MCV armor damage, 5%. Sitting in the control room, I remained calm. The moment the grenade flew over, Ing had evaded it. Although not completely, the blast wasn't enough to cause major damage. I was extremely satisfied with the MCV's performance and defense. Removing the camouflage and returning to its true form made driving it incredibly exhilarating. The roar of the engine, the screech of tires against the ground, the deafening crashes, they all blended together like the excited roar of the vehicle itself. Watching the data streams scrolling rapidly across the screen, I could almost feel the heartbeat and the blood flowing through the vehicle's body, surging like rolling thunder. Not even a grenade could stop it. On the contrary, the MCV suddenly accelerated, charging straight into the crowd with an even more brutal posture. Crash, smash, boom, boom. Continuous collisions erupted, mixed with agonizing screams. The survivors' loose alliance was shattered by this charge, collapsing in the blink of an eye. Many turned and fled, while deep fear flashed in Chen Ting's eyes. Realizing defeat was certain, the thought of retreating arose in his mind. Compared to seeing me killed with his own eyes, his life was more important. Go, Chen Ting muttered softly. The two steel camp vehicles immediately turned around and fled. Since they had been standing on the outskirts, their retreat was also the fastest. Just as the two cars were about to leave, Chen Ting suddenly turned to Xie Shasha, murderous intent flaring up violently. You treacherous bitch. I'll kill you first. He reached out to grab her. Xie Shasha was just an ordinary girl. If she got caught, that pretty little head of hers would be snapped in an instant. Facing this sudden attack, Xie Shasha screamed in terror. A white flash suddenly shot out from Xie Shasha's chest, so fast it was almost a blur, darting straight toward Chen Ting. What the hell is this? He was horrified and quickly pulled his arm back to defend, but the thing was too small and too fast. Even with his quick reaction, he still felt a burning pain on his arm. Looking down, several long scratch marks had appeared on his arm, the flesh torn open. In front of Xie Shasha, a small white beast stood blocking the way. Its long ears stood straight up. At first glance, it looked harmless, even cute, but its blood-red eyes were chillingly cold, just like an extremely dangerous mutant beast. The people sitting in the same car as Chen Ting felt a chill down their spines, breaking out in a cold sweat. With that kind of speed, if this beast went crazy inside the car, no one dared to imagine the consequences. Damn it! Die! Chen Ting suddenly unleashed a powerful kick, but not aimed at Xie Shasha. Instead, he kicked the car door next to her completely off. Losing her support in that instant, Xie Shasha screamed as she was thrown out of the off-road vehicle speeding away. Falling from that height at that speed, she would be severely injured, if not dead. But right at that moment, the white beast turned into a streak of light, chasing after her in a flash. It appeared right beneath Xie Shasha, then suddenly transformed into a thin membrane wrapping around her. When she hit the ground, the membrane curled into a ball, bouncing a few times on the ground before finally coming to a stop. The ball vanished, and the white beast reappeared. Xie Shasha sat slumped on the ground, her face pale and her head spinning, but her body was completely unharmed. Squeak, squeak. The little beast chirped in protest. Xie Shasha patted herself all over, realizing she wasn't hurt. She immediately hugged the white beast in joy, kissing and rubbing it. Thank you, Luoluo. Thank you for saving me. You're so cute. Squeak, squeak. Luo Luo struggled in protest. This was too much. Normally, even Li Yusin and the others only dared to pet its head and stroke its fur. It was a mutant beast after all. It still needed to maintain its dignity. Oh right, I have to thank Zhang Lucia even more. Xia Shasha whispered, a complex look in her eyes. This was already the third time I had saved her, the third time she had escaped death because of me. She used to think she wasn't important to me at all, but right now, she couldn't stop a different thought from popping up. He still cares about me, right? She thought happily, completely forgetting she had just walked the line between life and death. By this time, my MCV had already pierced straight through the convoy. On the screen, I saw Chen Ting running away. Trying to run? My eyes turned ice cold. There were still many survivors fleeing in panic all around. Everyone wishing they could grow 2 more legs, but I couldn't be bothered with that trash. Without vehicles, whether they made it back to Qionghai City alive was entirely up to fate. But Chen Ting was different. He was the one person I absolutely would not let go. You're not getting away. The steel camp's vehicle was running at top speed when a massive roar suddenly echoed from behind. The people in the car looked back and instantly turned pale when they saw my giant mobile fortress taking up almost the entire road, chasing right on their tail. When watching from afar, they only knew this vehicle was very strong. But now that they were being chased by it at such close range, they truly understood what fear was. Just based on its size alone, this mobile fortress was enough to crush their off-road vehicle into scrap metal. Faster! Faster! Panicked screams rang out in the car. I'm already flooring it. The driver yelled, slamming the gas pedal to the floor. The modified vehicle spewed thick black smoke, the scenery on both sides blurring past amidst the ear-piercing howl of the wind. But looking in the rearview mirror, he felt like he was plunging straight into an ice pit. The mobile fortress wasn't being left behind at all. On the contrary, it was accelerating. Boss, what do we do? At this rate, we'll be caught sooner or later. Brother Chun, didn't you say you'd definitely kill Zhang Lucia? What do we do now? In this life or death moment, the subordinates who had been so respectful earlier instantly changed their tune. Don't panic, I still have a way, Chen Ting said, his voice chillingly calm. A close subordinate asked urgently what way. Chen Ting glanced at him, the corners of his mouth suddenly curling into an incomprehensible smile. Brother Chen, what are you doing? The man felt a sudden pang of guilt. Right after, Chen Ting took advantage of the broken car door, leaped out, and grabbed onto the roof of the car. He looked back at the mobile fortress hot on their heels, his eyes cold. Want to catch me? Keep dreaming. He tossed an object into the car, then sprang up, grabbing onto a street lamp pole, nimbly climbing onto the roof of a roadside building and disappearing. A grenade. The men in the car saw what he threw in. Smoke was already rising. They turned pale, but it was all too late. Chen Ting, you bastard. You'll die a horrible death. A violent explosion rang out. The car burst into raging flames, lost control, and slammed straight into the other steel camp vehicle driving behind it. Boom. In front of the erupting flames, my MCV slammed on the brakes, coming to a complete and incredibly stable stop from high speed. Chen Ting got away, Wei Feifei said, frowning. I stood up from my seat and grabbed the sniper rifle next to me. He won't get far. Chen Ting ran frantically through the dense cluster of buildings. His mind screamed that no matter how powerful that freakish vehicle was, it couldn't possibly tear down all these buildings. Honestly, he wasn't even sure if that thing could still be called a vehicle. He had never seen anything like it in his entire life. It could even transform. Did it think it was a transformer? But using the buildings as cover, Chen Ting's mood instantly lightened, and his sense of danger dropped significantly. Shiyu, lock onto him, I said calmly. My voice echoed directly through the MCV. As its driver, my consciousness was linked with the vehicle itself. Whenever I wanted, my voice could reach any corner, and my vision could sweep through every inch inside and out. Rin Shiyu nodded. Her gray eyes immediately pierced through the vehicle's hull, gazing into the distance as an invisible psychic wave continuously rippled out from the MCV. Her vision swept through every alley and building, quickly locking onto a cluster of spiritual light, fleeing madly at breakneck speed. Target locked. Her pupils contracted slightly. Ing slammed on the gas. The MCV crushed two burning off-road vehicles and charged in the direction Chen Ting was fleeing. Virum. In just a moment, Chen Ting heard the roaring engine behind him. Just as I thought, they have a psychic mutant. Chen Ting gritted his teeth. He had vaguely sensed someone tracking him earlier, and now he was absolutely certain. But being chased by me didn't matter, because he never intended to just run away in the first place. Looking ahead, a cold smirk crept onto his lips as he darted straight into a more densely packed residential area. If you want to die, then follow me. He's too fast, and he keeps weaving through the buildings. At this rate, we won't catch him. Taozi said anxiously while sensing his position. Let me do it. Jiang Zhuiying suddenly spoke up, her voice full of excitement. She hadn't fought in days and was itching for some action. I looked over at her. In those beautiful eyes, there was unwavering resolve and a surging, powerful aura. In my eyes, Zhuiying had always been the little sister who needed protecting. But in reality, she had grown up so much without me even realizing it. Just be careful, I nodded. Don't worry, brother. I'm off. Zhuiying smiled brightly and dashed straight for the door. The moment the door opened, she leaped out. The long sword in her hand shot forward, wrapped in crackling lightning, and embedded itself fiercely into a distant wall. Zhuiying's figure instantly materialized far away, following the blade. The lightning blade pulled free from the wall and returned to her hand with almost no delay. In the blink of an eye, a second strike was unleashed. Using this method of movement, Zhuiying's speed was pushed to the absolute limit, rapidly closing the gap with Chen Ting. Zhuiying has gotten stronger again, Li Yusin said happily as she watched from inside the vehicle. After evolving into a level 2 mutant, Zhuiying's body had finally completely synchronized with her powers. The stronger the power, the harder it is to control, and her electricity manipulation was among the most terrifying. Once mastered, its destructive force would be absolutely devastating. Chen Ting suddenly heard the crackle of thunder behind him, as if a storm was brewing right at his back. The sound drew closer and closer. The smirk vanished from his face, replaced by a surging wave of intense unease. He turned his head. For a split second, there was only darkness, and then a bolt of lightning tore through the sky, revealing the silhouette of a girl within the flash. In the blink of an eye, the lightning flashed twice, and with each flash, that figure closed in on him. A level 2 mutant. So strong. Chen Ting's eyes widened. An ability like Zhuiying's was incredibly rare. But he was someone who had once ruled a territory, holding the lives of thousands in his hands. Ruthlessness and decisiveness were carved into his very bones. I can't outrun her. She's going to catch me. He instantly made his judgment. Time to strike. Chen Ting stopped abruptly, channeling all his strength into his fist. His body swelled, and thick hair sprouted wildly. By the time the thunder roared behind him, he was already prepared. Die! His massive fist, carrying a deafening howl of wind, smashed straight toward the figure in the lightning. This punch, if it connected, was enough to turn his opponent into a bloody pulp or even shatter an entire house. In that moment, a look of cruel excitement flashed across Chen Ting's face. The thought of crushing that slender figure made him tremble with thrill. The punch was like a raging storm. Facing it, Jiang Zhuiying merely gave a faint smile. Have you ever heard of 100,000 volts? Instantly, Chen Ting felt a piercing sting across his skin. His hair stood on end, every strand pulled taut. A terrifying surge of electricity spread out, forming an electrical field hundreds of meters wide. Every living creature within that range had to endure the exact same sensation he was feeling right now. Just as he felt the electrical field form, a blue flash of lightning sparked before Chen Ting's eyes. His punch was incredibly fast, but how could it possibly compare to the speed of lightning? In reality, the moment you see the lightning, you've already been struck. Jiang Zhuiying had chased him for such a long distance. How could she not be prepared? She also wanted to show me just how strong she had become. Almost the entire building was engulfed in lightning in a split second. The blinding light was so intense that it could be seen clearly from hundreds of meters away. Arg! Chen Ting was blasted away, his fist not even managing to graze the hem of Zhuiying's clothes. The moment the electricity discharged, Zhuiying had already leaned to the side to dodge. As for Chen Ting, his entire body was charred black. The excruciating pain caused his muscles to spasm uncontrollably. He looked down at his fist. His hand had been scorched to charcoal by the electrical current. A miserable, agonizing scream tore from his throat. He felt the burning agony across his face, struggling to open his eyes to look at Zhu standing before him. Her face still carried a youthful innocence and a naive smile, but her eyes and the arcs of lightning coiling around her arm harbored a violent, terrifying power. Seeing Zhu step closer, Chun Ting mustered all his strength to spring up from the ground, turning and bolting away. "Oh, you can still run." Zhu was a little surprised. The current she had just unleashed far exceeded standard high-voltage electricity. This only proved one thing. Chun Ting's endurance was truly extraordinary. If he knew what Zhu was thinking, he'd probably cough up blood in anger. His combat tactics weren't weak, but against Zhu, he had absolutely no chance to use them. "If I can just make it there, just get there, I'll live, and you'll all die?" But right at that moment, Chun Ting's movements abruptly froze. His entire body stiffened as if frozen solid. Cold sweat poured down, and his heart pounded instinctively. He turned his head to look into the distance. My MCV was parked on the road ahead, and from a turret on its roof, a pitch-black gun barrel protruded, aiming coldly straight at his head through the gap between two buildings. Chun Ting understood perfectly well. If he moved even a single finger, I would immediately pull the trigger. Right then, Zhu appeared behind him with a zap. A spark of lightning flashed, completely extinguishing his last hope of escape. She puffed her cheeks, glaring at him with a very displeased look. So why did he even bother running? Even if he escaped her, wouldn't he just end up in my hands anyway? A look of utter despair washed over Chun Ting's face, as if he were forced to choose between being electrocuted to death or having his head blown off. "You ran in this direction to lead me right to them, didn't you?" I spoke up, my voice echoing directly in Chun Ting's ears. In his despair, he looked up, suddenly noticing combat vehicles and tanks appearing at the other end of the road. At the intersection behind the MCV, another armored formation was closing in, locked in from both the front and back. A look of manic joy suddenly erupted on Chun Ting's face. I was right. This was his goal all along. The Qionghai City Military's Armored Division. Nearly 30 tanks, over 50 armored combat vehicles, and a fleet of other military transports. With hundreds of artillery barrels and machine guns, this was the sheer scale of an armored division in Qionghai. On the command vehicle, a black flag fluttered in the wind. The Storm Armored Division. The one who had arrived was Song Lingchen. A smug gleam flashed in Chun Ting's eyes. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. In his mind, I was finally going to die right here. On the command vehicle, Song Lingchen opened the sunroof and stood up. The entire Storm Armored Division stared at my MCV in astonishment. The cold, gleaming metallic hull, the sleek lines, the highly advanced technological structure, and its suffocatingly massive size. If it weren't for the giant wheels underneath, no one would even think it was a vehicle. They'd assume it was a fortress or a war citadel. No wonder that survivor squad was wiped out the moment they made a move. The astonishment in Song Lingchen's eyes gradually settled. To him, crushing those survivor squads was as easy as flipping his hand, but when it came to my team, he had retracted his initial contempt. The lives and deaths of those bounty hunters meant nothing. If they died, someone else would naturally take their place. In another vehicle, Xiang Shuahai gazed toward the MCV. On her breathtakingly beautiful face, an unconcealable mix of joy and longing was evident. Through the bulletproof glass and firing slits, she seemed to see my face. Xiang Shuahai stood dazed for a moment. "It really is you," she whispered softly. "In the apocalypse, being able to reunite with the person you wanted to see was such an incredible luxury. You probably don't even remember me much anymore," she thought to herself. Between her and me, it was ultimately just unrequited love. But just being able to see me, knowing that I was still safe, that was enough for her. At this moment, Song Lingchen also looked straight at me. "You must be Jiang Lushi," he called out. "Very good. You're not bad. It wasn't a waste for me to personally lead a team here. Those survivor squads were just a warm-up for you. Next, your opponent is me. I wonder if you're mentally prepared." His tone was casual, but behind him was the encirclement of an entire armored division. For anyone with a weak mind, This scene alone would be enough to make them tremble. Song Lingchen showing up personally meant he clearly had no interest in just squashing a little bug. He had heard that my vehicle was incredibly powerful, and Commander Luo had specifically requested that minibus. Now, although he didn't see any minibus, if they were talking about a powerful vehicle, the thing standing before him made a lot more sense. Song Lingchen's gaze rested on the MCV, making no effort to hide his interest. I coldly eyed the army surrounding me and my team, then looked at Song Lingchen. "Who the hell are you?" I asked bluntly. This guy showed up acting all high and mighty, spouting nothing but empty words. With an enemy I'd have to fight to the death sooner or later, I had no interest in being polite. But from his insignia, I had already guessed he belonged to the Cheonghai City military, though he didn't seem entirely like regular army. I had seen this before in Star City when the apocalypse broke out. Most of the military protected the safe zones and civilians, but a faction had broken ranks, becoming local warlords for their own gain, holding the power of life and death. That temptation was hard to resist, not just for survivors, but even for soldiers. So this warlord is also part of that organization. I thought to myself. Song Lingchen raised an eyebrow, while the lieutenants beside him changed their expressions. Surrounded, yet still so arrogant? I am Song Lingchen. Luo Jiafeng, the commander of Cheonghai City, is my direct superior, he said, his voice calm, as if I were already a dead man. With his status as a top general of Cheonghai, he had his own pride. Turns out he's just an errand boy, I realized. I thought the one coming here would be a core figure of that organization. This guy didn't even know anything about the black hole, let alone that the black hole core was sitting right inside my MCV. Sending someone like this meant Luo Jiafeng didn't consider me much of a threat either. Then let me give you a wake-up call, and let the organization behind you understand exactly what it costs to piss me off. Murderous intent flared in my eyes. Wanted posters, encirclements, trying to push my entire team to our deaths. And I hold grudges. If I didn't hit them where it hurts, they'd keep thinking I was just some survivor group they could crush whenever they pleased. If killing Han Yuan wasn't enough, then I'll just kill a few more. And you'll be the first. At this moment, Song Lingchen glanced at Chen Ting, who was lying miserably after being scorched. His face was so mangled it was almost unrecognizable. But Chen Ting had brought him information, so he didn't intend to let him die right in front of him. Bang! A gunshot cut him off. Chen Ting's head exploded like a watermelon. His headless body fell from above, slamming heavily into the ground like a torn sack, blood splattering everywhere. I didn't even wait for him to finish speaking before shooting Chen Ting dead. A piece of trash. If he dies, he dies. Song Lingchen narrowed his eyes. But I hope you understand, his fate is exactly what you've just sealed for yourself. He raised his hand. Clank, clank. Every artillery barrel simultaneously swiveled. In the blink of an eye, dozens of cannons from the front and back aimed straight at the MCV. If they fired all at once, even a massive building would be leveled. The blood in my veins began to boil. After its evolution, this would be the MCV's first major battle. Ordinary survivor squads were no longer capable of causing any damage, but these warlords, with their modern weapons and terrifying firepower, were the real threat. I didn't want to clash with the regular army. I respected the soldiers who protected civilians and had even cooperated with them before. But I also needed the power to defend myself. Furthermore, a hidden faction existed within the military, gnawing at it from the inside like a spider weaving its web in the dark. No one knew exactly who was behind it, but the danger they exuded was palpable. They weren't just a menace to the military zone, they were my enemies. Could the MCV win this battle? I was truly looking forward to finding out. Fire, Song Lingchen ordered. Boom. The tank cannons roared, and artillery shells tore through the wind, hurtling straight toward the MCV. The deafening blast echoed far and wide, startling the hordes of zombies and mutant beasts outside the town. Among them were intelligent, evolved variants. They remembered this sound all too well, the harbinger of destruction from when the base cities were attacked. But why was artillery fire ringing out in this small town? Instantly, countless blood-red eyes from all directions converged on a single point. Ing! I called out. Ing gripped the steering wheel and slammed the gas. At that exact moment, I shouted again, Zhuing! The MCV shot forward, its door swinging open. Simultaneously, a bolt of lightning struck down from the roof of a building, darting straight into the open door of the MCV. Swoosh! The moment the artillery shells rained down, the MCV abruptly swerved, crashing straight into the shopping mall next to it. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted, nearly severing the road in half. The ground was ripped open into a massive crater. Concrete shattered, and huge cracks rapidly spread in all directions. Song Lingchen maintained his calm demeanor. If the MCV had been blown to pieces right from the start, he actually would have been disappointed. But right now, a glint of light flashed in his eyes. The MCV's sudden change in direction was unexpectedly agile, truly astonishing. But what if multiple tanks fired simultaneously? Even so, his goal was never to destroy the MCV, but to capture it intact. Surrender. You can't escape, Song Lingchen shouted loudly. In this situation, the MCV was backed into a dead end, yet inside the shopping mall, it remained completely silent. Song Lingchen frowned slightly, his gaze turning cold. Won't shed a tear until they see the coffin. He immediately issued an order. Squad 1, Squad 2, advance. Storm Squad, move out. Rumble. Tank after tank and combat vehicle began closing in on the shopping mall. Under their cover, an elite assault team quietly approached from multiple directions. The Storm Squad was a force built personally by Song Lingchen. Even before the apocalypse, they were elite soldiers. After the apocalypse, they awakened mutant abilities and underwent specialized training tailored for the post-apocalyptic environment. They were the spearhead in his hands, specializing in striking directly at the enemy's weak points. As they approached the mall's entrance, they saw the doors completely destroyed, the gaping hole twice its original size. Inside, the high-ceiling suspended panels were torn to shreds. Shelves had collapsed, and building materials and shattered glass were scattered everywhere. The entire mall was plunged into darkness and ruin. Amidst the devastation, the MCV sat motionless deep inside, like a giant beast trapped in a cage. Meanwhile, from the outside, rows of cold gun barrels were aimed squarely at it. The Storm Squad captain gave a hand signal. The elite soldiers immediately fanned out, taking cover behind walls and shelves. Each of them carried explosive devices, their primary targets being the MCV's wheels. In such a confined space, even if the people inside spotted them, that massive vehicle had no room to maneuver. But right at that moment, a deep, muffled roar echoed from within the MCV. Standing inside, I heard that sound. It was like the MCV's very own heartbeat pounding fiercely. On an internal monitor, through Starseed's projection, I saw the black hole core spinning rapidly. Previously, the MCV used a hybrid energy of black light and fuel, but this time, I directly summoned Starseed. Fully activate the black hole core, I ordered. The black hole core vibrated, then spun at breakneck speed. Black light energy instantly surged violently, coursing through the MCV's hull like boiling blood. The Storm Squad, standing not far away, watched this scene in stunned silence. The deep roar grew louder and louder, echoing throughout the shopping mall. Virum, Virum. The wheels hadn't even moved yet, but the entire vehicle gave off the feeling that it was about to lunge forward at any second. At the front, a pitch-black gun barrel was aimed straight at the main entrance. Where was this vehicle planning to charge? Outside was an entire armored division. The MCV shouldn't have had any way out, yet an indescribable sense of unease welled up in the hearts of the Storm Squad members. Move now, the captain hissed. In a flash, 30 figures simultaneously dashed toward the MCV. At the same time, I roared, fire. Boom. A terrifying blast of compressed air instantly tore through the space, blasting straight forward. The Storm Squad's faces drained of color. Shelves, ceilings, and walls were shredded in an instant, pulverized and swept out by the powerful shockwave along with the debris. The tanks and combat vehicles outside the mall only had time to hear a massive explosion before witnessing countless objects hurtling toward them like a hurricane. The air cannon. The two tanks at the front line were instantly flipped into the air. In that exact moment, the MCV rumbled and charged out. In its hybrid energy state, the MCV's normal speed already exceeded 300 kilometers per hour, and it was even faster when accelerating. But under the full blacklight state, even I didn't know what limits it could reach. The only catch was that the blacklight energy reserves weren't high, so this state couldn't be maintained for long. Activate the collision ram. Activate the flamethrowers. I issued back-to-back orders. Let these warlords see our true power. Tank armor could withstand the air cannon, but once flipped over, they temporarily lost their combat capabilities. The two flipped tanks were just the beginning, but the blown-up dust and debris had completely obscured the vision of all the tanks and combat vehicles ahead. And right at that moment, my MCV tore through the smokescreen, charging out ferociously. The collision ram gleamed. Driven by the terrifying speed fueled by black light energy, my MCV unleashed its full explosive power in this very instant. Amidst an earth-shaking roar, the MCV slammed straight into the formation of tanks and combat vehicles ahead. Previously, when it was still a minibus, I had collided head-on with a tank, but back then, I could only push it back. But now, after the upgrade, just how devastating would the impact be? Even I was waiting in eager anticipation. Crash! The frontline tank was struck by the collision ram, its entire chassis sent flying straight into the air. The MCV shuddered violently from the impact, but it didn't slow down in the slightest, continuing to plow forward. Damage data quickly popped up. MCV hull damage, 10%. Collision ram damage, 5%. Screech. Deep dents appeared on the hull. The ram showed obvious wear, and even the windshield cracked under the insane shockwave. But my eyes lit up as I looked at the scene ahead. Tanks were sent flying, while the less heavily armored combat vehicles were outright crushed. The vehicles behind them suffered a chain reaction of collisions, creating a chaotic pileup. At the same time, from the combat room on top of the MCV, the fierce rattle of machine gun fire erupted. Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan, and Wei Feifei each took up firing ports in different directions, unleashing a hail of bullets, taking 300 points of damage to deal 1,000 to the enemy. From the moment we were surrounded, I had mentally prepared for a bloody battle. The MCV and my entire team were my strength. Inside the command vehicle, Song Lingchen's pupils shrank drastically. He had just issued his orders and hadn't even received a response before that metallic beast burst out of the maul like it was breaking out of a cage. Its reaction was too fast, its combat power too overwhelming. Even he couldn't help but feel wary. If it's this powerful, even if I blow off a piece of it, it won't be completely destroyed. Commander Luo will understand. Song Lingchen's gaze turned icy. The MCV was too dangerous, forcing him to change his strategy. Preserving it intact was no longer the priority. Just as he was about to issue his next command, a voice rang out beside him. Colonel Song. Song Lingchen frowned, turning to look at Xiang Shuahai, who was standing there with a calm demeanor. Why did you get out of your vehicle? Since I'm already here, I don't plan on just watching, Xiang Shuahai replied softly. You don't need to fight. It's best if you retreat to the rear. Song Lingchen said. He didn't need a woman's help while commanding an entire armored division. But Xiang Shuahai shook her head. I have to act. I've waited for this opportunity for a long time, and now is the right moment. In that instant, Song Lingchen sensed something incredibly abnormal. Killing intent. A wave of lethal danger flared up. Xiang Shuahai's eyes turned freezing cold in a flash. A fierce gale kicked up. Amidst the roaring wind, she dashed toward the command vehicle, raising both hands. Dozens of wind blades, 5 or 6 meters long, materialized. Howling deafeningly, they swept straight toward their target, aiming to shred the vehicle and everyone inside. The wind shrieked like a descending hurricane, forcing the surrounding soldiers to squeeze their eyes shut. Flash! Over 10 wind blades cleaved down simultaneously, instantly tearing the command vehicle to pieces. Xiang Shuahai landed gently from the air, her eyes glued to the pile of scrap metal. She was right in the middle of the armored formation, so she only had one chance for a sneak attack. Since she made her move, she had to go all out. Fortunately, Song Lingchen was in an armored combat vehicle. If it had been a tank, she wouldn't have been able to slice through it even if she risked her life. He must be dead, Xiang Shuahai thought to herself. If she managed to kill Song Lingchen, the entire armored division would undoubtedly fall into chaos. Blood seeped from the wreckage. Even the surrounding storm squad members were stunned. But right at that moment, a hand suddenly thrust out from the shredded armored vehicle, gripping the roof tightly. The hand was a sickly grayish blue. The moment it touched the metal, the solid steel began to melt. The roof was thrown aside, and Song Lingchen emerged. He had completely transformed. His entire skin had turned blue, and his clothes had been melted away by his own body. His body had shriveled, his limbs elongating grotesquely, making him look no different from a mutant beast. He had several bone-deep wounds inflicted by the wind blades, but the surrounding flesh was covered in a layer of slime and was rapidly regenerating. Song Lingchen glared coldly at Xiang Shuahai, his eyes brimming with killing intent. Xiang Shuahai, very well. Very good, he growled. She had once asked him for help. The survivors in Subei were still waiting for aid from Qianghai. Yet now, she dared to launch a sneak attack. Song Lingchen wasn't stupid. He understood perfectly well why this woman had chosen to betray him. I guessed right, Song Lingchen said coldly, his gaze locked onto Xiang Shuahai. Jiang Lushi. He's the one you mentioned before, the guy who saved you and all of Subei. Xiang Shuahai's face paled slightly, her heart skipping a beat. She had just gone all out, yet Song Lingchen was still alive. But having reached this point, she had no way back. She smiled and nodded in response. That's right. Xiang Shuahai's gaze drifted toward my MCV, a fleeting, unconcealed look of happiness appearing on her face. That very expression made Song Lingchen even more furious, his voice turning as cold as ice. This time, he would be the one to kill her, and everyone in Subei as well. Are you going to drag the innocent survivors of Subei into this? Xiang Shuahai's expression changed. Huh. Song Lingchen chuckled softly. Don't worry, I won't go kill them myself. But under Qianghai City's embargo and wanted orders, all I have to do is forbid anyone from trading with Subei and cut off their medical supplies. That much I can easily do. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. Don't look at me like that. This was your choice. Those survivors can only blame you and Jiang Lushi. He continued slowly, his tone carrying a sense of arrogant charity. Actually, you had a better choice. If you stayed by my side, I naturally would have helped you beg Commander Luo for aid to Subei. From the moment Xiang Shuahai launched her sneak attack, in his eyes, she was no longer a gentle beauty, but merely someone who had to die. Perhaps you don't know my ability. I possess a highly potent toxic ability. I can kill people in countless ways, making them taste every kind of agony imaginable. Ever since his ability awakened, Song Lingchen seemed to have shed his final disguise, revealing his inherently dark nature. Xiang Shuahai sneered. Her fingers twitched, and fierce winds swirled around her, as if a goddess of storms had descended. If you want to kill me, you'll have to pay a heavy price. She had noticed the rows of gun barrels silently aiming at her, but at the same time, the Subei camp members she had brought along had also quietly closed in on the tanks and combat vehicles. Arg! One of them suddenly grabbed a Storm Squad soldier's gun, yanking him violently out of the vehicle. Similar scenes unfolded one after another all around them. But Xiang Shuahai had no time to pay attention, and Song Lingchen cared even less. He looked at her, then glanced at my MCV rampaging in the distance, the corner of his mouth twitching up. We really are a perfect match. It's a pity your fate is to submit. Your ability isn't just compatible with mine, it's completely countered by it. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Lingchen suddenly lunged out of the rubble, opening his mouth and letting out a horrifying roar at Xiang Shuahai. His jaw unhinged to a grotesque degree, spewing out a bizarre, eerie blue smoke. That blue hue carried a sense of lethal danger. Just looking at it made one's scalp tingle, like an invisible warning sign. The blue smoke shot straight forward, bursting right in front of Xiang Shuahai. Her expression changed instantly. She hurriedly covered her nose and mouth, but the surrounding space was already engulfed in the blue smoke. Sister Xiang, the people from the Subei camp cried out in horror. That eerie smoke also caught my attention and the attention of everyone inside the MCV. Are they having a civil war? Zero frowned, looking into the distance. I was also confused. Why had the Storm Armored Division suddenly fallen into such disarray? Even their own soldiers were too stunned to react in time. This is our chance. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan immediately grew excited. Rumble. The remaining tanks were consecutively rammed away by my MCV. We completely broke through the encirclement, charging out of the shopping mall. Faced with the MCV's power, impact force, and defense, those kings of the battlefield lost their terrifying dominance. But those soldiers just now, why were they so distracted in the middle of a battlefield? And that vehicle, it looks like their command vehicle, Wei Feifei said, looking out from the combat room in disbelief. The Storm Armored Division had many skilled marksmen aiming straight for the MCV's wheels, and Wei Feifei's targets were exactly those snipers. A marksman she had deemed the hardest to deal with had actually exposed a flaw during the moment of chaos. If the vehicle that was just destroyed was the command vehicle, then the enemy's disarray made sense. And within that blue smoke, there seemed to be a silhouette. At this moment, my gaze shifted as I looked in that direction. Why is she here? I blurted out. Who? Zhu Ying asked. Xiang Xuehai, I replied. Rin Shiyu also froze. So it's her. Then that civil war just now makes sense. The command vehicle being shredded was the work of Xiang Xuehai's wind blades. But her current situation was incredibly dangerous, positioned right in the center of the Storm Squad's formation. Right then, a strong gust of wind swept through, blowing away the blue smoke and revealing Xiang Xuehai's figure. Losing the lift of the wind, she fell to the ground, letting out a soft groan of pain. She looked up, her pale face staring at Song Lingchen. See, he said coldly, your wind only makes my toxic smoke spread faster.